allowed to have a lawyer present during the questioning today?
Right there. Oh no.
There's an audience, and there's an interrogator. So I've got everybody here.
First, let's start with your name.
My name is Mary Piatocha.
Now, why don't you have a middle name?
Because there were too many children, and my mom couldn't think of all the names.
And so, your exact birthday?
My birthday is May the 10th, 1932.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 7 brothers and 3 sisters.
And where were you born?
I was born in Wembley, Alberta.
Wembley.
Wembley.
Do you, by
In
any...
a little tiny house on the prairie.
Right. Is that house still there?
I doubt it.
Did you have functioning plumbing?
Absolutely not.
So where did you get water from?
We had to go 5 miles for water.
5 miles?
5 miles.
With buckets?
Not with buckets, but with great big barrels.
Oh yeah?
They would put it on a stone bolt,
Yep.
you know, and they would put these great big barrels, and we would fill them and then bring them home. And then in the evening, if we need more, we'd have to go all the way 5 miles and get water again.
So this is like a once a week family excursion to go get water? Or
Oh no, every day.
every day?
And we chased our cattle for drinking water. We had to take them to that hole where we used to get our water.
How many cattle did you have?
But we had quite a number of cattle, a couple of cows anyway, and a calf and horses, and we had to take them to the water.
Yeah.
And we would water them and then take them home, and then in the evening we'd take them back again to that watering hole. Yeah, it was very hard.
And that's what your parents were. They were farmers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Was it more cattle farming or was it like crop growth?
Grain. It was more grain and a lot of gardens, but don't forget the land was very limited land as such because it was all worked out by hand. We didn't have much machinery, so Dad chopped down trees and he made his own lumber and he built a little house.
Yep.
A 2-room house, and we slept in one room, and Mom cooked in the other room.
You and all your brothers and sisters? And then Mom and Dad?
Yeah, yeah.
What are your parents' names?
My father's name was Theodore,
Theodore.
and then they used to call him Fred. Later on in years, I know him as Fred, but his real name is Theodore, and my mom was Martha.
I don't suppose by any chance you know when they were born.
I have no idea. I know my mom was from Cherchichi in Ukraine. It's
Okay.
a little village, and I actually had an opportunity to go all the way up to the village, but they couldn't take me in because it rained so hard, and it's nothing but mud roads. So I couldn't get in to see the little tiny village where my mom was from. But my dad, I have no idea where he was from.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So 1932. So World War II would have started when you were 6,
Yeah.
and it ended in 1945. So you'd have been 13 when it was over. Do you remember anything about World War II or anything?
No, not really.
Not really.
Not really.
What was Alberta like back in the 30s and 40s when you were young and growing up?
It was a place where I really enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun. We had, the neighbors and everybody helped each other, so we were kind of like a family in a place where everybody knew each other. It was a lot of fun. We worked very hard because we worked on a farm. We worked on the gardens, and that's what we lived off.
Yeah.
So it was extremely hard. But come Sunday, we had a lot of fun because we'd go to church. My father was a pastor of a little church. And all the neighbors came to our house like all the friends that were in church, automatically they came to our place. And I don't know what my mom fed them every Sunday, but it seemed like everybody enjoyed themselves, and we used to play a lot of baseball.
Baseball.
The kids, yeah, we would get together, we'd play baseball.
Were you a home run or a pinch hitter?
I was right field,
Right field.
and that's where I wrecked my shoulder because I threw the ball so hard one day, and my shoulder just went hot, and it's been troubling me ever since. And then of course it broke when I was at work at Safeway.
Okay. How old were you when you left home?
Right after school, actually, I went to grade 8. No, grade 9, and then Dad had to pay to go to school because we were all. It was a one-room school for all the grades up to grade 9, from 1 to grade 9, and then once you came to grade 9, you just didn't go to school anymore, unless your father could afford to send you somewhere. So he sent my sister to Spirit River, paid for her way, so she went to Spirit River, and the following year, right after that, he sent me to Sexsmith, and I went to Sexsmith, and I took grade 9 there, and I passed to grade 10.
So you're probably like 14 at this time,
Yeah,
about that?
coming 15, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's like 1945, about that. Okay.
And,
So
yes,
grades
that's the
grades
story.
1 through 9 in the same classroom with one teacher.
Oh, yeah. No, we had two teachers.
Two teachers.
But they were from 1 to grade 9. Yeah, that was a little tiny school.
Okay.
Yeah, and so then I passed to grade 10, and then I came home, and my father said, well, I'm not going to send you to school anymore. So I cried and cried and cried because I wanted to go to school. So he sent me to Saskatoon, to Bible school.
Okay.
So that's when I went to Bible school. And the following year,
Yep.
and that's where I met Grandpa, my husband.
So how old were you when you went to Bible school?
Well, I was about 15, going 16. And then I went to Bible school. I was 17, because it was the following year after that. And then I met Grandpa. And not when I was 18, but 19, he already proposed to me. We got married.
Okay. We will come back to that. Without that, we can't just like breeze through. You just can't breeze through that. That's it. That's the whole story. That's it. Wrap up the cameras. Let's go production. We're out of here.
This is it.
I'll tell you what. I want to know a little bit more about the original house. Can you describe it?
The house?
Yeah, the original house.
It was, the kitchen had flooring. I'll never forget, we used to scrub it every Saturday night for Sunday so it'd be clean. And the bedroom was dirt. Mom would just pour something on the, like it was gumbo, like, it was very, very hard. And my mom used to just, I don't know what she put on it, but she did something on the floor. She would smooth something on it, like, I don't know if it was water or if it was some chemical, because that was our bedroom. And she would, in among the beds, she would put this cloth and she would smooth the floor right out so that we walked barefoot on it and we wouldn't get our feet dirty.
And what did you sleep on?
Dad made beds and we slept on straw ticks. Mom made straw ticks for us.
All of you in one room. Your 7 brothers,
Right.
you and your 3 sisters.
Right.
So there's 11 of you plus mom and dad, so 13 in one room.
Right.
And the other room
Mom
was the kitchen.
was the kitchen, and with just a stove and a cupboard, I see it, and table and chairs, benches, not chairs. Dad made the table and the benches. We used to sit on that. Yeah. And he bought, Dad was a very hard worker. He used to work at home I know he used to buy flour because you couldn't just go, we couldn't go to a store. I think I remember going to the store the very first time was, I must have been, oh goodness, maybe 10 or 11.
Okay.
And we went 18 miles from Wembley to Spirit River
And how did you get there?
by horse and
By
buggy.
horse. Okay.
Yeah, and I went to the store with Dad. Well, that was an outing that you wouldn't believe. Yeah, I remember that. So, yeah, it was.
So that was an all-day trip.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Well, 18 miles is a long way to go by
And
horse.
not only that, but we lived on one side of the creeks. And if you haven't been there, you don't know what I mean by creeks. It's huge, huge, like going to Vancouver through those mountains. Well, honestly, those hills were huge like that. And you'd have to cross from one end and go all the way down and then up again. And 18 miles we traveled like that with horses. Dad always went, yeah, with Mom sometimes, but very rare. Mom was always at home because there was so many of us,
Sure.
and she was cooking all the time. And yeah.
So who were all your brothers and sisters?
Hmm?
What were the names of all your brothers and sisters?
My eldest brother was Mike and Bill and John and Anna, my adult sister, and Mick, and then me, and then Vera, and then Alec, and then Kay, and then Daniel, and David.
And out of all them, how many are left?
Actually, there are 5 of us.
5 of us?
Yeah, I've got 3 brothers and a sister and
Yep.
myself.
And yourself. And you're the oldest of them now?
No, my brother John is 94,
94.
and he's in Kelowna. He
Kelowna.
lives in Kelowna with his wife. Yeah,
And how often would your dad go to the store? I'm just curious, because that's
often?
it's a whole day,
not
Sure.
very often. Just whenever he needed something.
which would be like flour or
Yeah, flour or something, and he always bought it in. My dad was very unique because after we learned these things, it would come with different patterns. The sacks with
Yep.
flour would come with different patterns, so he'd always make sure he'd buy the same kind of a pattern. So Mom could make things for us, like our clothing. She made our dresses, our underclothes, everything. She made out of those sacks.
just by hand.
She would wash them, and then Dad, of course, bought a sewing machine. I don't know where he got it, but he got a sewing machine, a singer, and my mom sewed all our clothes.
Well, for just somebody like me, you're talking like about a space movie right now.
Well,
Like I watch John Wayne movies where this stuff's reality, right?
This is true. Do you know that we made our own toys? Because there were no toys. We used to make pickup sticks.
Yep.
We used to make those checkers boards.
Yep.
And we had no toys, so we would make rag dolls.
Yep.
All we did was have a rag doll, and I remember buying a Thomas. I'll never forget her name. She was in school with me, and I was little. I was maybe 12, 13, and she said, "I have a doll, and my mom wants to sell it." Well, everybody needed money, and I said, "Well, how much does she want for this doll?" And she said, 50 cents. And she explained it to me that it was such a beautiful doll, and we never saw really a bought doll. So I begged and begged, and Mom says, "Okay, go and pick up this doll already." So I went one day and I went through furrows. You know how you plow the ground? So I went all through our farm and all through their farm, and the Bina Thomases, they lived on the other side of the. And I went through all those furrows. I've never been there before, and I'm terrified. But I'm going to get this doll. I got these 50 cents in my hand.
And how much,
And-
if you had to guess, how much would 50 cents have been kind of worth in today's dollars then, right?
Oh my goodness, I have no idea. Like,
Because I'd imagine
like
50 cents was very valuable.
Dad used to make $1 a day.
So this is half your dad's wages for the day.
Yeah.
So this is like $100, something like that, $80,
Yeah.
today's standards.
So, yeah, but anyway, I went and I knocked on the door and I said who I was and I was coming to pick up this doll. And they gave me this doll and you will not believe it. It was this, like I was dragging the little feet on the furrows because I couldn't lift it up. It was a huge thing. And what it was a rag doll, but it had hands that were ceramic and the face was ceramic. It was the most precious thing that I saw in my life. I'm pulling this thing home, and we all fell in love with it. My mom used to make clothes for it, and we were just sitting in the corner because nobody could play with it because it was too precious.
And it had hair, I'm assuming?
No, it just had a bald head.
Bald head.
But it had a beautiful face.
And what was it made of? Like porcelain or?
No, the face was porcelain,
Porcelain.
and the hands were porcelain, and the feet were porcelain.
Gotcha. And then it was attached to rags.
And it was rag doll. I'll never forget. Yeah. And
So-
I brought this thing home.
So it's probably like 2 feet tall kind of
Oh,
thing.
it was tall. It was tall. I was dragging the feet along the furrow because I couldn't lift it up far enough. Anyway. Yeah.
What were some of your daily chores as a kid?
Just helping, I guess, Mom mostly in the kitchen, and just when we were little, we didn't do very much, but when we got a little bit older, like 4, 5, 6, we were working in the gardens. We were helping out wherever we needed, like Mom. Chickens. See, they had no chickens when they came to Canada. They had nothing. So when they came, my father went out into the bush and he watched where the ducks and the geese were laying eggs by the water. And then every time he would see an egg, he would put, they bought somewhere a dozen of eggs. And then he'd go and he'd put one egg in that nest and take that egg out. And then until they were all under that duck. And then the duck would sit on the eggs and hatch them. And then he'd go swimming and Dad would catch all the little tiny ones because the chickens won't swim. They won't go after it. So he'd quickly catch them and bring them home and feed them. And that's how they got their chickens.
By getting a duck to sit on chicken eggs.
Yeah.
And what do you do with the duck egg?
We'd eat it. Of course. Didn't throw it out.
Yeah, what was the one chore you didn't like to do?
I don't remember that. I really don't. I know that as I was getting older, I was the tallest, the biggest in the family. And so I was really, I worked hard. I had to scrub on the scrub board all the boys' jeans and clothes and the white shirts to go to church. They had to be done just right. And that was very hard. And we had a iron that you would heat on the stove. And you had to make sure it was very clean, otherwise the shirt would get marks on it. You had to be very careful how you ironed. So yeah, it was hard work. But for some reason I enjoyed it. Somehow it was a lot of fun.
Okay. What was do you remember the name of your friends at school?
Yeah, there was a Mary Kutrowski. Mary Kutrowski was really Anita Skorotko was my very best friend. She lived a half a mile away. We had a lot of fun together. Her husband passed away in Kelowna. She lives in Kelowna actually.
And you still keep up with her every
Yeah.
now and then? Really?
Yeah.
Talk about a lifelong
Anita,
friendship.
yeah. She's got a family and Kelowna.
Mhm.
Yeah, she's got 4 girls. Yeah,
So when you were about 15, so 1947, that's when you went to Saskatoon to Bible school, right?
yeah.
How
I
long?
was 70. I think I was 17 by then.
About 17, so
Yeah.
1949
Nine.
in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
How longer after that did your parents stay in that house, and your family stay in that house?
In that house.
Yeah.
I can't remember that, but I know that they moved from that place to Grand Prairie. They bought a house in Grand Prairie, and they lived in Grand Prairie for quite a number of years till Uncle Alec was pastor of this church, and then they moved to Edmonton. So they moved from that farm to Grand Prairie and then to Edmonton.
So you guys were on a farm, and then you bought a farm in Grand Prairie, or was it just a house?
In Grand Prairie was just a house.
Just a house.
They rented rooms. They actually rented to somebody that you know,
Sure.
Sonny and Cher.
Yeah.
They
Yeah, seriously, Sonny and
actually
Cher.
lived in their house renting.
Yeah. Grandma and Grandpa.
Yeah,
Yeah, Grandpa told me the same story.
Really?
Yeah.
yeah, it's true.
Sonny and Cher were renting from my grandparents in the 60s
Yeah.
in Grand Prairie.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Also, just before you go any farther with that, there was one part that I wanted you to talk about. When your parents first came to Canada, I'm not sure how many children were with them at that time, but when they first came to Canada, the government gave them land, but they had to clear it and farm it and all
Right.
of that. And now there was an issue with the first farm, and then they gave them a second farm. What was that story?
Well, you know what, I'm not too sure exactly what happened, but I know that from what I remember is, they took the farm away from Dad. They never gave him any money or anything for it. They took away that farm.
So they cleared the land,
Yeah.
they made a farm, they built a house, and the
Yeah.
government came and took that away.
They took that away, and then they gave them another farm, which I believe might have been that second house that I'm thinking of. But they just gave them the land, but he had to work it. It was all bush
So he had to clear the
But he
land
had to
again
clear
and
the
build
land
another
again.
house.
and set up again. Yeah. But I remember that Dad already told us the story that the government, after a while, sent him $5, and Dad looked at it and he said, "What are they trying to buy me, or what are they trying to do to me?" And he got scared. He thought maybe they were setting him up for something. I mean, just coming from Ukraine and everything is new, he didn't know. So he got scared. Why would they be sending them a $5 check? So he just turned around and sent it back to them, and he never heard anything from them, and he never spent the check.
So what do you know when your parents came from Ukraine?
In 1929.
1929. Okay. And now, what was the primary language spoken at home? Was it Ukrainian or English?
Ukrainian.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yeah, we didn't even know how to almost speak in English, and when we went to school,
That's where you kind of learned English.
yeah, we learned English in school.
And how many of your brothers and sisters came from Ukraine with mom and dad? Like, how many were born there and came here
There were 4 brothers and a sister.
that were born in Ukraine?
Yeah.
And how much?
And Anna was the girl,
Yeah.
and she was only a pound and a half
At birth.
at birth. And she was 6 months old when they came to Canada. And you know, with the incubator that Mom brought my sister in, you will not believe it. They still do in Ukraine. Daniel will know that. They have these great big pillows, and they're square. They're big pillows, not like our pillows. And what she did is made a hole, like not a hole, but she punched in the corner, and like,
So that she
you know
could
what I
roll,
mean?
so that she could roll the corner of the pillow up on itself.
Like, I'll show you because
Here, you can use this one here.
it's important for you to see it. Mom told us the story. She
So you
went like this.
just lift the pillow up a little bit.
She went
Just so we could see.
like this and made a hole in here with a pillow because it's big. And then she wrapped her up this way. And that's the way she nursed her, fed her, everything, because she was so tiny. She said she couldn't, yeah. And she survived that
I mean, you have to
long
think
trip.
She wasn't even a kilo.
No, pound and a half. Like
Yeah.
that's a couple things of soup.
She was just a tiny little thing. And and Mom said it was just a miracle how God helped her
How
to
did
bring.
they feed her?
She was nursing her, and she would just nurse her and just leave her there, you know, because I can't
Was she-
imagine
was
how
she-
my mom did it.
Was she premature or just kind of?
No, she was fully. Apparently, I don't know. I have no idea,
Yeah, she has no idea.
but she
I'm imagining she was premature.
was so tiny. Yeah, when she told us the story, it was amazing. And the thing is, so interesting is when I was in Ukraine. This is jumping ahead. I met the lady in Ukraine that knew my mom and my dad. The pastor knew my mom and my dad because they were converted in that church in Horichio. But what I want to tell you is the lady, the little old lady that I met, she knew my brothers, she knew my mother, she babysat for Mom. When she would go to the field to work, she would babysit my brothers and sister. And she said to me, she said, oh, I remember Fichko, and I remember there was a Michka, Vasilko, Ivanko, i Malesinka, Dyuchenko. She remembered. And that was my mom. It was just amazing.
Yeah.
Zyla.
Zyla, sorry.
Z-Y-L-A. And a lot of
Zyla,
my
sorry.
brothers spelled with 2 L's and some spelled with 1. But my father always spelled with 1. Z-Y-L-A.
Gotcha. Because you guys kind of had to transfer a Ukrainian name, that characters that don't exist in English, and then try to make
Exactly.
a name that's somewhat fitting, kind of thing,
So
right?
how did you pronounce your name in Ukrainian?
Zhela.
Zhela.
Instead of Zyla.
Yeah. Well, in English you say Sela. But in Ukrainian, they just knew my parents as Zhela.
And so your brothers and sisters, they had Ukrainian names, and they came here, and then they kind of got English names, kind of
Well, no,
thing,
it
or-
was the same name, but they anglicized them.
to make them easier to pronounce.
Like Michka would be Michka. So it was Mike. You know what I mean?
Because Misha is Michael.
Yeah. And Vasilko, you know. This was Bill, William, actually Bill. And Nicola, Ivanchik, well, what do you say? Ivan, John. And I don't know how to, they just said Malesinka, Dyuchenko.
Little tiny girl.
That's all she remembered. She said, and I don't know where they are. I said, I'm their daughter.
Fondest memory. Before you left to go to Saskatoon, what was your fondest memory?
I miss my parents very, very much. I wanted to go, and yet I wanted to be at home. I was so lonely for my parents. I could have walked home from Saskatoon. I would have known the way. I would have walked.
GPS.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to tell you this story because really it's funny. You'll enjoy it. I always loved to play Playhouse. And my mom and dad had well, a cellar, actually a cellar, but it was outside. He made a great big hole,
Okay.
and then he put wood on top,
Yep.
and then he put dirt on top,
Yep.
then he put ground on top, like with grass and everything, and covered it with straw.
Okay.
So it was very, very warm, and that's where they kept all the jars and anything to do with horses, the bridles, the
How deep?
harnesses.
How deep
Well,
in the ground
it
do
was
they go?
deep. It was deep.
Like it's a big,
I don't know.
it's tall.
I don't know.
It's
I
probably
don't know.
5 feet tall.
Well, but down into the ground it was maybe like this, because I remember I was little. I was about 5 years old. And I could step in. And I thought, oh, I'm going to make a little playhouse, and my parents were out in the fields. It was in the fall. And so I went and I found a pail that had a hole. So I thought, oh, that'll be a beautiful stove. I opened the door and I went in there, and this is fall. My mom had everything in there. She prepared you know, I can't imagine how they didn't kill me.
Everything's ready for winter, in other
But
words, right?
everything, and Dad had all his harnesses and just, what you name it, there was a storage.
Yep.
So anyway, I went in there and I playing all day long, you know, in the afternoon. The sun was hot. My mom and Dad were in the field working. And I thought, well, I'll go get a pail and I'll turn it over. And there was a hole in this pail.
Yep.
And I thought, I'm going to make a stove. And I'll light it. And then I'll just put the fire out. And it'll be fun. Like, I'm thinking this. So I did that. I went and I tipped over this pillow and I went and got a mattress and I lit a fire. And believe it or not, I mean, it was straw and it caught on fire. And instead of me running out, right by the door, I jumped and I ran into the back to hide. And honestly, it was a miracle. I don't know why I'm alive today, but it was something just picked me up and threw me out of that door. And everything burned. And my mom and Dad are coming from the field and they're thinking the house is on fire. And they're running, apparently, just exhausted. What's happened? Where are all my children? You know, worried, they didn't know what happened. And I went and I hid in the doghouse. And they counting the kids and everybody's there but me. Oh, Mary, they're calling me, and Mom and Dad are crying, the kids are crying, where is Mary? And I'm sitting in the doghouse.
Thinking you're going to get beaten for burning down the cellar.
Exactly. And anyway, by evening time, I thought, well, I gotta get out. So, well, I'm gonna go and I'm just gonna apologize. So I went, I got out, and everybody, she's here! Where was she? They're so excited that they found me that nobody even thought of giving me a licking.
And so did they?
No, they didn't. They didn't hit. I did not get a licking. I did not.
Did was
They
the
were
whole
just
cellar
so
lost?
happy to see me.
The
One
cellar
of the
burned?
kids is still alive. Oh man.
But no, the cellar burnt.
The whole cellar
Oh,
burnt.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And that was your food for winter.
Well, yeah.
And it's already late fall or early fall or?
Well, it was in the fall. They were doing hay.
So it was earlier fall.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
And how old do you think you were
I was about 5.
Oh,
when you burnt the cellar down?
did they ever find out it was you that did it?
Oh yeah.
They knew.
it was me.
They thought she
But
was
they were
inside.
but that's what she was saying. They were so happy that
That-
she was alive. She didn't get in trouble.
You can imagine. It was just
That's all your
unbelievable.
dad's like horse collars, like everything was gone.
everything, you know, how they suffered loss. It's only by God's grace that they managed. It's only honestly by God's grace, because so many things happened, and yet they were so honest. My parents were very honest. He wouldn't do anything that he shouldn't. He sent them $5 back and everything. He worked all year for a cow, all year. And he got this cow, and 2 weeks later the cow died. You can imagine. He said, I cried like I was crying for a baby. He said, just, you know how things, but then other things would happen that were good, and they just overcame all the time. Yeah.
So when you left the farm, did you have any kind of cattle and horses and chickens and pigs?
Oh, they had everything.
Okay.
Oh, by then, yeah, they had a lot of
If you had to
horses.
guess how many of kind of each, what would you guess? Like how many cows, how many horses?
Oh, goodness, they must have had at least a dozen horses and at least a dozen cows,
Okay. Any pigs?
pigs and chickens and geese and turkeys and,
A goat?
no, I don't recall a goat. And I don't recall a sheep.
No sheep
I
either?
don't recall, no, but these other animals they had. And I remember another story that is very unique, that when I was still on the farm at that time, our horse Beauty, her name was Beauty, she had a little colt, and I can see the barn way up there, and the house was on a little kind of a hill up here was our house. And all of a sudden, and Mom and Dad are in the kitchen, and I don't know where we were all playing around, running around, I don't know what we were doing, but they were in the kitchen, and they're looking, and the Beauty is coming up the hill, and she can barely walk, and she's coming all the way up to the house. And so they ran out to see what's going on, and all of a sudden she just finished the top of the hill and she lay down, and then she made a couple of sounds like, you know, for her colt to come. And all of a sudden she made this couple of sounds, and the colt just came dashing up this hill, and she went like this with her paw, and we were all outside by then. You will not believe this. She went a couple of times like this to the colt, and the colt lay down beside her, and the tears in her eyes, she just cried. This Beauty, she cried for her colt. She died.
Right there.
And it was a very amazing, like, you know, that she called for that colt to come, and it just came bouncing, this little tiny thing, and she went like this with her paw, you know, over like this, and that little thing laid down beside her, and she started to cry. And of course, by then we were all crying.
That's fair, Grandma.
It was quite the story, and a very true story. It was amazing, really. And we all saw it. We watched.
If you could describe your dad and mom, describe their characteristics, like, you know, funny or stern and strict, or like describe them as people.
I described my father was a very understanding, a very kind person. A very, very kind person. That's all I know. He would do anything for anybody. He was gentle, he was kind, he was very compassionate. My mom was more strict. She would take care of the kids, like, you know, and be very strict with us and make us do the work. But Dad was somebody that you didn't cross. You knew that his principles were like this, you know what I mean? But he was very forgiving. That I remember very much.
A very strong moral
But
character.
yeah, we really had to like, yeah, we were very, very, we respected him. It wasn't fear, it was more respect than fear,
Sure.
but like we couldn't touch, like say a needle to sew a button on a Sunday. There would be absolutely no way. We just wouldn't be able to do that or iron something or wash something on a Sunday. It was very strict. Yeah.
What did your brothers do to get in trouble? Come on, your brothers must have done something to get
You know
in trouble.
what? You know what? Honestly, I don't remember anything like that. I just don't remember it. If I'm trying to think, if there was any punishment, it was never done in front of us. If there was any word said, it was never in front of all the other children. So I honestly can say I do not know. I don't remember. I remember my brother went hunting one time. My eldest brother,
Which was
Mike.
Mike.
Yeah, he went with his friend, and he got lost. Both of them got lost, but somehow Bill, what was their name? Bill somebody. I can't think of their last name right now. But they were our neighbors, our friends. They were from church. And this Bill came home, but Mike didn't. And Mike was lost for 3 days in those mountains. Like I'm telling you, those hills, like from one end to the other. There was this, we called it a creek, but it was more than a creek.
Like a canyon.
Yeah. And in there, he got lost for 3 days. They were looking for him. And finally, one day he walked out and somehow found his way home. He saw a light somewhere in the night or something, and he followed that certain light, and he came home. And I remember how we all just cried because
And how?
he was home.
Sure. How old was Mike at that time? About ish.
19,
About 19. Okay.
20.
So he's a man already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, poor thing.
Was he hungry when he got home?
Yes, he was hungry and afraid and just absolutely worn right up. Oh,
Grateful to be.
yeah. A lot of things have happened, but
Absolutely.
Did anybody from your family fight in the war?
World War II.
my brother went to war. My brother did go to
Mike?
Mike,
Okay.
yeah, but he was the only one. And he came back, about 3 years later.
Okay, that's something we should talk about, because that'd be
But I don't know nothing more about it.
No,
I
no,
just
no.
know that he went and he came back and he was fine. He didn't say very much about the war at all, what he did. I know he wouldn't take up arms, so he worked. Where did he say he worked? I can't even remember. I don't remember too much of that.
I got one question for you.
Okay,
So,
answer. I'll
as,
answer.
so I know you guys didn't live in town or anything like that, but did you guys have access to a newspaper or anything like that, or
If we want,
had access to a newspaper or anything like that?
my father used to get, but that was way later on in years. Yeah.
Because I was just kind of curious, like, I know you didn't really pay too much attention to World War II, but what was the perception of what was going on? Like, what did you guys think was going on in World War II? Like, what was the consensus, or how did you feel about it?
As growing up, I was so free with life. I just didn't think of war. I didn't think of any. My mom and dad really, they were the ones that kind of instilled a little bit of fear in us that, war is really horrible. They used to cry because, of course, it affected their lives. And they always prayed that the Iron Curtain, he always said, which I could not understand when I was little growing up. He would always pray that God would destroy the Iron Curtain.
Which is the Soviet Union,
The Soviet
USSR,
Union,
and all that?
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Then they prayed daily for that to happen, that the Iron Curtain would go down because he prayed for the people. He was always his friends and his churches and everybody like that. So I knew that war was horrible, but somehow it did not affect me. Like,
So
I
how
didn't take it seriously, I guess.
So how did you guys get your news? Was it just newspapers? Did you have a radio?
Later on in years, and I remember the very first radio we got, and only Dad would listen to the news. We couldn't use it for nothing else, but he would listen to the news and then he would relate to us what's going on in the world
Okay.
through a little radio. But that was later on in years. And I know that he bought I wasn't at home already then, that he bought the first washing machine was when my youngest brother was born. We were all born at home. In the
Home
house,
birth.
in the house.
And did people in the community come help with the birth and all that stuff?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. And everybody worked together, kind of, Like, say, if somebody was doing gardening, all the women would gather, they would help, they would weed and that, and they would come to our place and they would help my mom, and mom would go and help the other people, you know what I mean? Like, everybody was very friendly somehow. We kind of worked together.
And were your neighbors other Ukrainians, or were
They were all Ukrainian.
all Ukrainian?
Yeah, but as you went farther, I would say north from us, there was a German colony. And of course, we had a German principal in school. We had, they were not very friendly with the Ukrainians. They used to call it bull hunks and everything else.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, they were different people.
And this was during the war.
I was going to say during the war that must have been pretty tense
Yeah,
relationship.
it was. So, like I say, we were not, like, they didn't associate with the Ukrainians. We were kind of all by ourselves. But there were so many Ukrainian people. Yeah,
Hence why the community was tighter.
that's right.
Okay. Imagine.
They're all over the world now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I pray for them every day. I pray for my extended family because there are so many of my brothers and sisters' families that are alive and going through difficulties, and others are okay, and you know how it is.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
And what years did your parents pass away?
My father passed away in 89, and my mom passed away just the next year.
1990. Okay.
Yeah.
And how old do we know how old they were when they passed?
Dad was 90, outside of just a few days, he was 94, and my mom was 87.
So your dad was born in 1895, and your mom was born in 1903.
Can you imagine?
Whew.
They
Whew.
would be so surprised they have GPS today. Nobody getting lost. It's running water.
Wow.
Now we're on to the fun section, Grandma. You're going to Saskatoon to Bible school. And so
Crying my way.
so tell me
I
again.
want to go, and yet I'm crying because I'm so sorry I'm leaving my family.
And so why did you go to Bible school? Was it because the grades were over and you couldn't go to school anymore?
I couldn't go to school.
Because your grades were already over,
Yeah,
right?
and-
1 to
and
9.
That's right. And I could go on, but somebody'd have to pay my way, and it was quite expensive. So Dad paid for 1 year for my sister, Anna, the little tiny one, so that she could finish grade 12, and she did. But she was the only one that finished grade 12. The boys left when they were still, I think maybe if they got grade 9, grade 10, I don't think they were beyond that. It was kind of, that's when you had it.
Okay. So now you're going to Saskatoon. How did you get to Saskatoon?
My brother took me with a truck.
With a truck. Okay.
Yeah. And then what am I saying? He took me with a truck to the train station, and I went in a train.
On a train.
Yeah.
And
And then they picked me up over there because Dad let them know that I was coming, and yeah.
so where did you stay when you got there?
There was a school there.
Okay.
And I went straight to the school.
And you lived at the school?
I stayed in the school, yeah.
Okay. So tell me about the school. Do you remember the school name?
It was a Ukrainian language or something like that. You know what? I don't even remember the name. I don't think it exists anymore. I think
And it
it's
was all Ukrainian?
I think it's all gone, and yeah, it was all Ukrainian.
Was it?
Young people,
Okay.
yeah, we were all Ukrainian that were there in school.
So tell me about it.
Well, it was fun. It was fun in a way because we got together, we played games, we helped in the kitchen, we took lessons, we studied, we had outings. So in that way, it was fun. But like I said, I missed home very, very much.
Sure. And you're about 17 at this
Yeah,
time, right?
yeah.
Okay. And you met Grandpa at the school.
Yeah.
Okay. So how long were you at school, do you think, before you met Grandpa?
Well, I knew him because he was finishing school, and he was,
Because Grandpa was 4 years older than you.
yeah, and he was finishing, and I just came. So of course I saw him. We were all in choir. We had choirs together, and we sang together and everything. And there was quite a lot of us there at the time. It was interesting. It was very interesting. It was we had a lot of teachers that were very good. Some were strict, some were not so strict. Of course, we couldn't go out together. They wouldn't allow us to go out together. But we did sneak away a few times.
Was there like a curfew where everybody goes back to your dorm and you shut the doors for the night?
Oh yeah. And
Well,
you had
what time was curfew? Do you remember?
curfew. I don't remember the time, but I think it was around 10 o'clock.
Around 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
And then sometimes
We
you guys
had
would
to be
sneak out?
indoors, yeah. And everybody, they checked on us all the time too.
So who were your friends at school?
Oh my goodness. There was a Bill Eskowich, Bobby, and I don't remember her last name. We were together in a room. That was my girlfriend and my roommate. Dr. Wojtak, Dad's best friend, was there. He was going there to take Bible school, but he was going as a dentist. He was going for that. And of course, Dad was theology, which was to be a pastor. And they were the best of friends.
How many kids were at this school?
I'm
Ish.
trying to think, maybe 35.
35, okay. So it wasn't like hundreds of
Oh,
you.
no.
So everyone really knew everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You knew everyone, yeah.
Okay.
The teachers and everything, yeah.
So, was it spring in 1949 when you went to this school? Like
It
spring?
was in the fall.
It was in the fall. Okay.
Yeah, the beginning of September, I think it was, very beginning of September.
Okay. And you met Grandpa really early on, and
Yeah, well, kind of, when was it? It was in the spring already, in the springtime. We used to go for walks, and honestly, it was just nothing but walks. We used to go, and Dad never even looked at me. He didn't. He had a girlfriend.
Grandpa had a girlfriend.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
middle school?
Bobby, yeah.
Uh-huh.
He had a girlfriend, and of course he didn't, like I said, he didn't look at me. But anyway, I used to go out with John Wojtak, and that's why I was teased that John Wojtak was my boyfriend, but he really was not. We just went for walks with him. I didn't care for him at all, but he was a nice guy, very nice. He was going for to be a dentist. And anyway, I remember one day, Dad, he told me after, this is what happened. I don't know what happened, but this is what he told me. He said I was going out with John, and he was going out with his girlfriend. And we went for a walk, and I see where we went in Saskatoon. It was beautiful. It was in the early spring, or in the springtime. And we were walking. We went underneath this great big bridge, and we'd throw pebbles in the water, and we would talk. And on the way, they would buy us a 5-cent ice cream, and that was really something. So anyway, that's why I like to go for a walk. And one day he told me that he asked John if he could. He said, "Why don't we change girlfriends? I'll take Mary and you take Bobby." So they did, and after that, we remained together.
So you're telling me Grandpa just came up to you one day and was like, "Yeah, I know John's kind of your boyfriend, but I traded my girlfriend for you." Is that okay with you? Are you telling me that's what happened?
He didn't actually say it, not many words. He just told me that he asked John to trade with him, and so he did. And I did go out with him, but actually, what really got us together was it was his turn to preach, and of course he was very good. He really was. And I remember in class we had to give sermonettes, and I remember this one time he went up to preach, and he preached that his little heart was just popping out of his shirt. He was preaching so hard, and it was so convincing, and it was so emotional. And I was sitting there, and I was still not really going with him or anything, and I said, "Oh Lord," I don't know if I said it out loud or if I just thought it, but I said, "Lord, may that man be mine." And that was it. And he never even looked at me or anything. And I thought, oh well. But anyway, then we went for that walk, and that's when he said he asked if he could take me, and he took Alex's girlfriend. So that's how we parted.
And so you guys started dating
Yeah,
in
then we started dating.
spring in 1950.
And then we had a lot of problems because they were told us we can't go out together and stuff like
The
that.
school told you that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, by 1950 we were married.
In the summer?
Yeah.
So you guys got together in spring 1950, and you got married that summer?
Yeah, we were married. And
Where did you guys get married?
In Sichuan, it was called Sichuan.
In Sichuan.
In a little
Back in
church.
Alberta?
Yeah, in a little church in Sichuan where my father was a pastor.
And did Grandpa come out here and ask your dad for permission, or?
He did.
He did?
He really did, yeah.
And then you guys, okay.
And it was so funny. This is a funny story. Because after we were dating, we couldn't, of course, phone. There were no phones. And we just could converse with letters. And I wrote him a letter, and I said, he's so crazy. I said, "You know what?" Because he had to come by train. I said, "We'll meet you." I said, this is the very first time he was coming. I said, "Well, we'll meet you if it doesn't rain."
If it doesn't rain.
If it rains, you're on your own?
If it rains, we can't get across. Because we couldn't.
You'll be sleeping at the station.
So, oh, that was funny. He said when I got that letter, he thought, boy, does she ever love me.
She
I'll
loves
meet
you as long as it doesn't rain.
And so
Oh, my goodness.
so how did he ask you to marry him?
Oh, that was very simple. He just asked. He asked me, and I said I would marry him. Yeah, my father loved him. My father and mother both, they really loved him.
So now, since Dad was from Manitoba and you were from Alberta, how did your parents meet each other?
No,
They never did.
they never did. No, I don't believe. I don't believe that I think it was just by pictures. I don't think they ever. maybe at some conference they might have met, you know, after we were married. I really don't, because the travel was almost impossible, and there were like, we couldn't take pictures of the wedding. There was somebody had a camera, and we have one actual picture of the wedding. That's not the actual
This
picture.
was after.
That's
It was
after.
actually-
I was already pregnant with Dennis.
Yeah, there's one picture of them by the church
Yeah.
with this little girl. And
Exactly.
I've seen that picture.
That's
that's
the
the only
real.
actual picture from the wedding day.
That's actually the wedding day. That one. If we just that one little picture.
Yeah, this was months later.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys, he proposes, you accept, you go back to Sichuan, that the church that your dad was the pastor of,
Yeah.
you got married,
Yeah.
and then what happened?
Nothing. Then we.
Where'd you go after that?
Well, first, Dad, we stayed there. We stayed till after.
So you only went to Bible school for the 1 year.
Yeah. And
Had
we
Grandpa
stayed-
just graduated Bible school, or
he
he had just graduated?
Yeah,
Okay,
he-
so there's no
and he-
reason for you guys to go back to Bible school.
No.
Okay,
No.
so-
He took theology by correspondence. He worked very, very hard in that way to get his training, and then he got okayed by the board of the Baptist Union. He was accepted as a full-fledged pastor. But I wanted to say about when we got married, then right away Dennis was born 11 months after we were married, and we were there till
And where was there?
Yeah.
Where was there? In Sichuan?
this was in Sichuan,
Okay.
and then from
Yeah, where did you guys
from there
stay?
we went to Edmonton.
Wasn't it Round Valley?
In between that year, we were traveling to Round Valley. We had services in Round Valley. From Round Valley, they sent us to Edmonton, and already Darlene was born in Edmonton.
So right after you guys got married, you went to Sichuan, you got married. Where did you stay in Sichuan right after?
At my mom and dad's house.
The one bedroom, one kitchen house.
That, no,
Where-
no, they had
This
a,
is the other house.
Okay,
thank goodness.
they had another house, a
Thank goodness.
big house. Yeah, it was nice.
Okay, and then you got pregnant with Uncle Dennis,
Dennis.
and so then you guys went from Sichuan to where?
Just a minute, just to Edmonton. They sent us to
Edmonton.
But you
After
But you had your little house in Round Valley.
in
did you
Round
not?
Valley. I'm trying to think that. Yeah, in between Sichuan and Edmonton, we were in Round Valley for a while.
Round
Because
Valley.
they
Yeah.
had this very tiny little house. There's a picture.
It was a
of
granary.
There's a picture of it with
Yeah.
Dennis.
Yeah.
And where was Uncle Dennis born?
He was born in Edmonton.
He was born in Edmonton. Okay.
Yeah, he was born in Edmonton. Just a minute. He wasn't. He was born in Spirit River.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
He was born in Spirit River. Beautiful nuns. Nuns looked after me. Why they were just awesome. Anyway, yeah.
So you were only 19
Yeah.
when you had Uncle Dennis.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they sent us after Round Valley. They sent us to Edmonton, and that's where Darlene was born
And what year was Darlene born?
in '53.
53.
Yeah.
And you guys were living in Edmonton. So
And we were living
where were you living in Edmonton?
We were living in this bachelor's basement that also had only a bedroom, where only a bed and a little stool could stand, and a crib, and a kitchenette, and we used a bathroom where this old man used the bathroom too. It was kind of
A share.
yeah.
Community share situation.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it was $35 a month. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And so how did you guys
he
meet?
was getting $100 a month.
grandpa.
grandpa.
Oh, okay.
And so, and we had the apartment to pay for. We had, a car that we had to pay because we took it on credit. We had the gas to put in it. We had food to buy. Whatever else we needed was all within that $100 that he was getting every month.
Gotcha. So you were at home nursing Uncle Dennis and all that because he's obviously small.
Yeah, he was little.
And so Uncle Dennis would have been 2 when Auntie Darlene came
Auntie
along.
Darlene, that's right.
And how long did you guys stay in the bachelor apartment?
Then what was his name? Alec Amelia came on the scene. Him and his wife and their 5 children were renting an upstairs in this big house. And he came to Alex and he said, why don't you live in the basement here with us so that you won't be so cramped in this little tiny place. So we moved from that bachelor's place to Alec Amelia's house, and we lived in the basement suite there.
Okay. And was
it
Auntie...
was already much, much bigger. We had room and everything.
That's fair. Was Auntie Darlene born yet, or about to be born?
She was born when I was in that that bachelor's
In
house.
the bachelor, and then you guys
And
moved
then we
into there.
moved
Okay.
already with her, yeah.
Okay. And how long did you guys stay there?
Oh goodness, I don't even remember. When that was, we must have been there for quite a number of years because, what was his name? Moosh, Donnie's father.
Bill.
Donnie's father.
Bill Muse.
Yeah, he was a realtor, and one day he came to Alex and he said, look, I can find a house for you, so or build a house for you or something, so that somehow, I don't even know how, without money, he built us this house. And later on, we paid for everything else. Like, I don't know how it all worked, but at the very beginning, we didn't have to pay anything. So whether he paid the down payment for us or what happened, I don't know. Till this day, I don't know. I never asked. I lived in a house. It was a beautiful house. He built us a house.
And where was that?
And which house was that?
That's the house yeah. Mhm.
That's the house.
That's the
This
house.
was this was in Beverly.
Beverly. Okay.
And at that time, Beverly was kind of like Leduc is,
Yeah.
right? It's another little town off of Edmonton.
Okay. Okay. So the house in
And
Beverly.
it's still standing.
Oh yeah, I still go by it.
We drove by it, dang
You
it.
get that address. But okay. So what?
It's 4011.
Are you kidding me? You know this? 4011.
4011, 4011 for sure.
Yeah. It's just off 118th Avenue. Like when you go
Yeah.
towards the river,
Yeah, it's right.
It's right in there.
actually the last
last
turn in along the river, and it's right there.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we drove by it and thought, I remembered it so much bigger at the time. It's just this little house, but it's still there.
And so you guys stayed with these other people in the basement for like from
quite a number of years,
1953 till 1958, 59, so
Yeah.
6 years.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah, we were there for a long time.
Okay.
They
And then
used
you,
to live the Amelias used to live in this big granary, and we were always envious of them because they had so much space and stuff. It was hilarious, but yeah, when we used to go and visit them in this house, these kids were in heaven.
this was the house.
Yeah.
Back then, yes, it was a
Yeah,
big
it
house
was.
because they had lots of
Yeah.
children, and yeah, it was
Yeah.
quite something.
So in the 50s, I'm assuming you didn't have a TV.
No.
You had a radio though, right?
We had a radio.
A radio.
Sure, we had a radio. And we actually had a camera.
A camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was really something.
after 1953, you nursed Auntie Darlene.
Yeah.
And now Uncle Dennis in 1955 would be 4, and Auntie Darlene would be 2. When did you start working or like anything like that?
Well, it was, I'm trying to think when I went to the store to Safeway. There was a Safeway not too far from us. And when there was no milk in the fridge for the kids, so the kids were hungry. And there was nothing. I mean, you can't live on $100. And Dad would come home. He was working they were building Sears. And he got a job part-time working cement, with the cementing floors. And he would come home and he'd take his Bible and his books, and I know he wants to study, and he puts it on his chest and on the bed, and he's sound asleep. And I'm thinking, what are we going to do? We've got to get out of this mess. So I went and I begged the manager if he would give me a job so that we would at least survive with the kids, so we'd have some food. Because it was very skimpy, I tell you. So I started working, and that was, Darlene had to be, she had to be 3.
3. So about 1956, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay. And so did you start part-time at Safeway?
No, I actually started right full-time. They were hiring full-time at that time.
Now, what did they pay you as an hourly
Oh my
rate?
goodness, it was so little. It was much. It was a lot of money at that time in comparison, but it was nothing. I think I land at the end. I wish I would have kept those stubs. It was just, I think I got $1,200. 1,200 every 2 weeks.
No way. That's probably near the end, right?
There's no way you're making $1,200 in the 50s.
I can't quite remember. I wish I would have kept those stubs.
Sure.
Because that would have been
Dollars.
interesting. Yeah.
How about $1 an hour or 80 cents an hour? Or
80 cents an hour. Probably.
something in that neighborhood kind of thing at Safeway. So where did Uncle Dennis and Auntie Darlene go when you would go to Safeway to work?
They would be with them.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
But that's all. We couldn't afford a babysitter.
Well, sure. Did you work during the day or did you work
I
evenings?
worked well, it depends. First of all, I worked every day, during the day. But I'd come home and there would be cleaning and washing and children and crying and food and
And that was just Dad.
And, yeah, exactly. That was just Grandpa.
Dad. You know, I'll tell you, and that carried on for years. I do regret going to work. I regret it till this day, and many times I cry myself to sleep.
It's okay. You did amazing with all this insane workload that boggles my mind. So at Safeway, what department did you work in?
In the meat department.
In the meat department. Okay. So
Very hard work. I
Sure.
was so tired. And the thing is, I'd have to be there for a whole hour, for lunch hour, because that's what you had to take. So you were there all day long, 8 hours, and 9 hours you waste by lunch, and by the time you get to work, by the time you get home. So it's like 10 hours a day.
how far away from your home was the Safeway?
Well, that one was close, but then after that they sent me to different stores.
Okay.
And so I was much, much farther away.
And how would you get there?
Dad would drive me
He would drive you.
many times. Otherwise, I'd take the bus.
Okay.
I used to take the bus.
And so you would have like a huge thing of meat, and you'd have to cut that down to bologna and
Oh, goodness.
sausage and whatever
You
else,
have
right?
no idea how hard it is to work in the meat department unless you're there.
I'm guessing you regret Safeway because you like Sobeys better.
At that time it was Woodward's, but that was the big,
Yeah,
that was the big
yeah.
competition right there.
Yes, that again was Alec Amelia got me to work at Woodward's because he was working there. And he said they pay a little bit better.
Yeah, they paid a little more.
So I went to work there because when we moved to Alec's place, I was working at, what is it called? It's still called Page the Cleaners.
Page.
I worked at Page the Cleaners, and that is hard.
Yes.
And what were you doing there?
Oh, taking the
Huge.
clothes and into these great big barrels and lugging them day after day. Oh, that was even worse than Safeway. Safeway was heavy
Because
enough. It
dry
was
cleaning
hard.
wasn't automated at that time.
No, it was all by hand.
It was all by hand. And Alex said to me, he said, Mary, he said, why don't you come work at Woodward's? So
And
then
this is Alex.
Alex Amelia.
Amelia. Okay. Gotta write that
So
down. How do
he
you
got me that job. So I went there, and then from there, Safeway took over. So I started working for Safeway, and I was there for 38 years. Yeah.
And so, when did you guys? How did the other house come about? The one that I know about. How did that?
After Beverly,
After Beverly.
we actually bought that house.
Okay.
Well, they
Yeah.
built that house.
Yeah, yeah.
So
What was his name?
So again, Bill Muse was involved.
Yes, of course, Bill Muse and
And who is
Who
Bill
was the
Muse?
word?
Bill
builder.
Muse, they came to our church. They were members of our church. Him and his whole family, like Art and Dawn and the whole family. He was a realtor, and he used to get Dad like these just fantastic, like he would do anything for Dad. He really would.
yeah,
So he landed up finding this new development, which was in Belvedere, and he got him this little plot, this piece of land, and then they plotted out this house. Dad was the one who drew out what he wanted for a house, and they went ahead with it, got the double garage, the whole bit, and Dad was there almost every day to check and stuff, and
Yeah.
as they built the house. And once they had finished, that was in 1964 when that house was finished.
Was finished.
So I was already 2.5 when
You
we
were,
moved
yeah.
in.
yeah.
Because I still remember walking in front of our Beverly house. That's how far back my memory goes.
So you guys really lived at that Beverly house for a while, eh?
Yeah, we did. Dad built on the front.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
still
Yeah, it
great
is.
big windows. It's
It's
the
still
front of-
tiny.
But there was mice in there like you wouldn't believe. Oh my.
Nobody
Because
said, nobody said it was a nice house. Just,
it was beautiful in the front.
Yeah.
Because he made such a beautiful, it added
Yeah. And
on, you would think it was a palace.
and the woodwork and everything in the front of the house
Oh,
is just gorgeous. That's what you'll
really,
notice
if
when
you
you
drive by,
If you
you'll
go see it right now, the same woodwork is still there.
We're going to. Don't worry.
So, but anyway, it only had a dugout basement,
Yeah.
so the mice were everywhere.
You think our neighbor's infested? You haven't seen nothing.
No,
You've
that's
seen
right.
nothing yet.
That's
I
right.
used to have everything in containers because if you didn't, the mice would be into everything.
But yeah, they were there for
We had an experience in that house in
5
Beverly.
years.
It was unbelievable. We must have either somebody crawled in through the window, but we didn't see any windows open.
yes.
But we went away. We took the kids and we went away on a little holiday. And we came back.
What year-ish do you think this was?
This was about 1963.
I don't know. I wish I could.
1963.
Around in the early 60s.
Yeah, it's about 63.
Okay. So you took the kids. Where'd you
We
take them?
came home. We went to Fairmont.
Fairmont Hot Springs.
Yeah,
There you go.
Fairmont Hot Springs. That was our favorite place. We always used to go. That's one thing, we
Almost
took the
every year.
children on holidays, every year.
What were you guys driving at that time?
We had different cars,
Different cars?
different kinds, many different cars.
Okay, so
That was, so now that was another family friend, Peter Petrushko.
Yes,
Peter Petrushko was the manager of Northgate Pontiac.
yes.
So my dad would have all these different cars, constantly different cars,
A
all
different
the time. So we had a
We had a-
1958 Buick Wildcat. We had a 1962 Ford Galaxy 500. Oof. We had all kinds
What
of
was that other
and
one?
he
That
went, he
unique
bought
What was
Renaults
that
and
unique one,
Citroens.
Daniel, what was that unique one that would
That was
lift
a
up?
Citroen.
It
yeah.
would lift up when you start
This
smoking.
this Peugeot, and you could press a button and it would lift off the ground like hydraulics, right, and then lower. So because the back wheels were covered, so the back wheel cover came just, you could see just the bottom of the wheel. So you had to push this button to lift up the thing so that you could get the tire off if you had a flat. So if you were on uneven ground or whatever, he would just lift it up the wheel.
Yeah,
Oh
honestly.
yeah, it was the very coolest car. And then we
Anyway.
had a couple of Volkswagen Bugs.
Yeah.
And when we used to go on vacation in that, even though it was dangerous because of the exhaust being right there, but if you look at
Oh,
an
Darlene almost died.
in the old Volkswagen Bug,
She did.
off the back seat is this, like, the back seat comes and there's this big dip, so there's this little hole. And I was just big enough, and I would always lay in there, and Darlene and Dennis would sit in the back seat, mom and dad in the front. And I'd sit back there, and boys, you just get high as a kite because the exhaust is right there.
Yeah.
You just,
One day,
Darlene went to sleep, just one didn't wake up.
Darlene actually did. She, honestly, I don't know how it's only again by God's grace. If you don't believe in God, we're going to Edmonton. We're going to Edmonton, and Daniel is with us. Daniel, my brother.
yeah.
And he said, and I'm holding Darlene in the front. And he said, Mary, give me Darlene. I'll hold her in the back, and you'll be more free, and I've got more room in the back. So I handed her to him, and we're going, and we're going, and we're going, and all of a sudden,
How old was Auntie Darlene?
Darlene had to be maybe maybe a year and a half.
Okay,
Very
small.
Very
baby.
small. And all of a sudden, Daniel hollers out, he says, something's wrong with Darlene.
Yeah.
She just, her little legs just
Straight.
went all stiff and out. And he's trying to wake her up and he can't. And we're blowing into her mouth, and he's blowing, and we're blowing into her mouth so she would take a breath, and she's literally out.
No, she's
And-
breathing.
And then I said, the only hope is drive as fast as you can, and I'll open the window, and maybe the
Cold.
wind will come into her. And that's where she came alive. She
Yeah.
literally,
Yeah. Yeah, later on, Dad found out he had a cracked exhaust, and it was just blowing exhaust into there. And of course, she was so little, it took
She
no
was the
time
first one.
at all to
yeah.
just
Carbon monoxide.
Yeah, carbon monoxide. She
Yeah.
she really did. I wouldn't doubt that many of her headaches now are caused
by
from that.
Well, your brother's lucky he didn't get knocked out too.
Well, you're
No, that's just it,
absolutely
because she was so
right.
small, she got it
It hit.
first.
Yeah, down
Yeah, they
below.
say the
Yeah.
smallest.
So, but anyway, this
The
house.
story, yeah.
the story.
Okay. So you took the kids on vacation to
Yeah.
Fairmont Hot Springs.
Yeah, and we came home, and we unlocked the door. We unlocked the door, and here's somebody. Somebody had one of those scribblers, the big scribbler,
Yep.
and the page was torn out, and it's right there. It says,
Right
"I walked
right
through."
by the door.
I walked through this door. Then you go to the Chesterfield. There's a great big. I was watching TV from the Chesterfield here.
He was right in
Writing where he was,
Yes.
ripping a page out and leaving it there?
Yes.
Okay.
And a great big piece of paper on the table. I made myself a meal and I ate it here.
here. Yeah.
On the bed. slept on their bed. Nobody signed it till this day. We don't know who was there.
And somebody came in and just,
Somebody came, took advantage of the whole house.
but left notes of everywhere he was and what
You had the most polite bum in all of Edmonton.
Yeah, we talked about that for,
Oh.
my goodness, years and years.
Oh, that was, but it was so hilarious.
funny.
'Cause you would think he'd sign his name somewhere,
Yeah,
but no, we don't know if it was a woman, a man,
Yeah.
if it was a couple, we don't know. But they enjoyed themselves. That was the main thing.
Did they at least kill a mouse for you?
I don't know.
Maybe that's what they died on. I don't know.
Oh, bunch of freeloaders, I tell
I don't
you.
know, maybe it was interesting. Oh, man. So you think you have problems with that man's house with the mice?
Well, we did come home once to the house in Belvedere with a native fellow who was we came home from church after the evening service, and he was, under the stairs we had the cold storage and stuff, and he had a knife, and he just was opening up like beans and peas and everything, and just helping himself, sitting there, and all of a sudden we all come home. He's like, "What do I do?" So Dad sent us all out and
And another
dealt with
time,
him.
yeah, and another time, we can hear somebody's opening the door. We can hear, we're sleeping already, it was late. We're sleeping and somebody is working in the door. So
Front door, back door?
Back
No,
The back door,
the back
okay.
door.
In the new house.
Yes.
Okay.
And Dad goes up to there, and here's this young guy. He was tall. Dad said he was tall and young yet, but totally out of it. and he says, Dad says to him, "And where do you think you're going?" And he says, "Right down there."
He had the
He
wrong.
says, "Oh no, you're not."
Yeah, he said, "This is my house." He had the completely wrong house one, and he was trying his keys there in the door.
He says, "Oh no, you're not." He says, "We're going right down there."
It's just like my sister had a Forenza car. I don't remember who made Forenza, but she had a Forenza that she bought from Peter Petrushko. And it was winter time, and it was my job to start the car for her, because she worked at Alberta Hospital as a nurse's aide.
Yeah.
And so I went out and
This has to be in the 70s.
yes, and I started the car, and my dad was already so sick and tired of all of our, because all of his cars leaked oil, Darlene's car, everybody's cars leaked oil. So he was so sick of it, so in the wintertime he put down all this cardboard everywhere. And so I opened up the back door of the garage and started Darlene's car. And I didn't open the door all the way, just about halfway, like we always did, just the exhaust would blow. Came back in and we're having breakfast. And we're sitting there, we're all having breakfast and everything's fine. And this kid comes in the house and we're all like sitting at the table. What in the world?
He comes running
And he
in.
didn't know what to say. He was so excited. And then finally he spits out that our garage is on fire. And here Darlene's car, the exhaust, because the muffler was pretty much gone, and it was hot, and it burnt started all the cardboard on fire with the oil, and Grandpa having all of his paint cans in there and stuff, so we had fire trucks from everywhere.
From everywhere.
Oh my goodness, we had fire trucks just everywhere, boom, boom. And then all of a sudden, Grandpa's paint cans start going off. And then the fireman wouldn't go near because it's like,
Oh. It was horrible. And the thing is,
and I had to go and I helped them. I was just a teenager, but I helped them pull Darlene's car out of the garage so they get all of that out. And then Darlene, I burnt my hand. I thought for sure it would have been just like in Home Alone. He has the symbol of the doorknob on it. Because she wanted me to get that keychain, because at that time she was engaged to this guy from Argentina, and he gave her this Mata tea keychain. And so I grabbed the keychain, pulled the keys out, and of course it's sizzling hot, but it's winter. I didn't even realize
It
for a while.
stuck to your hand.
Oh yeah, I was burnt fried. I'm telling you, slapped my hand in the snow just like that. It was just like Home Alone. Every time I see that, it reminds me of that. And I thought for sure I'm gonna have this Mata T key ring in my hand, but I had to get that key ring back for Auntie Darlene. You know.
Yeah, she needed it. But the thing is, it was so funny. Brother Tashuk was staying at our place exactly at that
That's
time.
right too. That's right too.
We called so that we would get help because the garage is totally on fire. And I'm walking around in the house and I'm saying, oh, thank you, Jesus, thank you, Jesus. And honestly, I kind of went berserk, I think. And I'm saying, thank you, Jesus, thank you, Jesus. Everything, he fixed everything up and that. And then finally, after everything was calm, Tadashuk says to me, you were walking around saying, thank you, Jesus, were you glad because the fire, the garage was on fire?
Because the garage is blazing away.
And I said, no, I'm thankful that my children are safe because it could have happened on the road. And Daniel and Darlene would have been in the car.
Right.
Sure.
And I'm saying, no, I was thankful that God protected Darlene and Daniel. He was just shocked. He thought that I was so glad.
The garage burned down. All of Grandpa's crap got
my
burned.
goodness.
It was pretty bad. I'll put it that way.
Anyway.
And just before we go, please tell them the story of Johnny or Joey or whatever, and Katie Skowatko.
Oh, that was in school.
This is a school story where this is awesome.
This is back when you're on the farm.
Yeah, it's still in school. Kids. And the teacher says, who has some news today? Who can share some news today? The hand goes up, snapping his fingers, and Johnny. Okay, Johnny. I was going to school this morning, and I met Katie Skowatko, and she said hello, and I said hello to her. And she said, oh, well, thank you, Johnny. And then she said, anybody with some news? He goes, yeah, snapping his fingers. Yes, Johnny. I was going to school this morning, and I saw Katie Skowatko, and she said hello, and I said hello. And that was it. And she said, that's enough, Johnny. You don't need to tell us anything more. You saw Katie Skowatko, and she said hello to you, and you said hello to her. But this was so cute, little, how they wanted to share his story that he saw Katie Skowatko.
Because Katie Skowatko said hello, and I said hello, and he was so proud.
Yeah.
It was like he's got a girlfriend now or something.
Yeah. He was just a little guy. I saw Katie Skowatko.
And he used to, but my
And
uncle Dan tells the story, and he could snap his finger like that, right?
Yeah,
and that's what he would do, just over his head, snap, 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 snap. And the teacher go, okay, yes, Johnny, what is it? And he'd tell the same thing. Katie, I saw Katie Skowatko, and she said hello, and I said hello.
Oh man, on this happy note.
You did amazing, Grandma. I love you.
I love you too, darling. I love you guys. Oh, I wish things were different, but we are not, and there's nothing we can do.
With the COVID.
Well, yeah, really. So we could get together more. I don't know when that's ever going to happen.
Hopefully soon.
Hopefully it'll be over soon.
Okay, so last time we sat down, we went from the farm, and we talked about your life on the farm with the brothers and sisters, and you burning down the cold storage.
Don't remind me.
Then we went over you going to Saskatoon, where you met Grandpa at Bible College,
Right?
and then you and him getting married,
Yeah.
going home, and then you moved into a little apartment, and then you moved into someone else's basement. And the last story that we talked about was the garage burning down.
Yes.
Yes, and that was already in the 70s kind of thing. Something we didn't talk about though was you being pregnant with Dad?
I was supposed to have, my bladder was, low, very low, like, I had a hard time with my bladder. So I was supposed to have surgery, but I was working at safely.
Mhm.
And, um, when the doctor phoned when I was ready to go into the hospital and told me when and everything, and I came in, and they didn't do any tests or anything. They just really took me in for surgery, and I went in to have my um, bladder fixed.
Okay.
So I went to them, and here, when they opened me up, they found out that I was pregnant. And I was pregnant for 6 weeks already. Can you imagine?
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, so they sewed me all back up. And I was in agony, I was in a lot of pain, and I didn't know what was going on. And Dr. Ritchie was my doctor. And he said, no, it was another doctor that made that. Dr. Ritchie was my doctor for him. But this was another doctor that did the surgery, I forget his name. So anyway, they just sewed me up and sent me back home. Didn't say anything that I was pregnant.
They didn't tell you?
No. And, every day I was in agony, and I'm saying, there's something wrong. I said, take me back to the doctor. And of course, I did go back a couple of times. Oh, it's all in your head. Everything is okay. It's in your head. And so finally, I had such pain, and my stomach was getting very hard. And I said, I've got either cancer or something, because my stomach is so hard.
Right.
And finally, when I did go again and again and again to the doctor, he finally had to tell me that I was pregnant. So he told me, but it was already late, and he wouldn't take me as a patient because he didn't do anything with babies. So I went back to Dr. Ritchie, and he said, well, I don't want to take you as a patient.
Too risky.
Well, yeah, because I was on a lot of drugs.
Right.
Pain and everything. And he said, the baby could be dead. The baby, I don't know what would happen to the baby because you were on so many painkillers. And I'm just not going to take you as a patient. And of course, Dad said, please, Dr. Ritchie, you have to take her as a patient. She's got no place to go. So he finally said, look, as long as you don't sue me, if anything is wrong, he says, I will try to save your life. I don't know if I can save the baby, but I will try. And of course, then he suggested that we do an abortion. And we said, no, we're not going to have an abortion. We're going to have the baby, regardless of what happens. And of course, he was born just perfect.
Do you know how big was he?
He was very tiny. He was only 6 pounds, 6 pounds, 2 ounces. He was a little guy. He was very tiny. And
Was he premature or?
and he was, no,
Right on time.
very
Okay.
full time. But he was so perfect, just absolutely perfect. We just praised God and thanked God because he was so perfect. So that's the story of my baby. And then, of course, everything healed and everything was fine.
Right. And how was your bladder after all that? Because that's what you originally went in for,
Yes,
right?
Actually, after him, I think a couple of years after, I had to have a hysterectomy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that finished that.
It's crazy to think that you got turned down by 2 doctors because it's just too risky. We don't want to take it on, right?
Well,
So,
exactly.
Well,
go
also
home.
don't forget at that time doctors didn't talk against other doctors, so
Right.
you would have a lawsuit on your hands.
Right.
Yeah, you couldn't. Like, he was really scared. He said, look, he was putting his trust in us that we would not
Sue him.
sue him if anything was wrong, like if something happened to me or to the baby then. so
Right.
that he wouldn't get sued. He just said, look, I'll only take you on that condition. So I think you even have to sign, Dad had to sign something to make sure that the doctor was safe.
An agreement that.
An agreement
Yeah.
made, yeah.
Okay, so something I do have a question about. When did you get your first microwave?
My first microwave,
Yeah,
making all the Bowdens.
the Bowdens. Okay.
The Bowdens bought it for us, and it was so funny. You mention it, and I see them crossing. It was in the winter time when they brought it. It must have been, I guess, for Christmas. It must have been because they just parked the car on the road.
Yeah.
And they're carrying this great big thing through the snow right across to the house, all excited.
When
And I'm thinking, what is this that you're bringing?
This would be in the
They opened it up and there was a microwave.
this would be like the 70s, sometime in the 70s.
Early.
Yeah.
Early.
76, 78, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It was the first.
But
It
it
was
was,
such a big microwave, but it worked so good.
it did.
They had that thing like long after many different
Oh.
versions of microwaves came out.
Yeah. I don't know where they got it,
Yeah.
what they paid for it, but Nick and Olga Boone brought it for us, the very first one.
What did you think when you got
Oh, it was so exciting. I couldn't believe it, that this thing would work and it would make toast and it would
bacon?
bacon and eggs and warm up coffee, warm up soup. You know, it was
Because
just
everything was done by stove and oven, right? Like everything.
of course.
Well, I guess maybe not even stove and oven, probably like a fire in the backyard when you were on the farm, but
That's all we had.
Yeah. They lived through a
And
microwave.
my father used to bake potatoes outside in harvest time. When we came to dig potatoes,
Yep.
I'll never forget. And they still do that in Ukraine.
really.
I mean, today I don't know how it'll be, but honestly, you would find a great big pail,
Mhm.
and they would put fat, some kind of pork fat around the edge of the pail,
Yep.
like a water pail, bigger. I don't know, it was big. And then they would wash potatoes.
Yep.
And fill the whole thing with potatoes, and then they put some bacon on top. And Dad would make a hole in the ground, and he'd make a fire.
Yep.
And when the coals were just right, he would spread them around, tip the pail over, and then put all the coals back around the pail.
Okay.
And then he would just cover the pail with, I don't know what it was. And then they would put dirt on top of it
Okay.
so that it would keep the heat.
Mhm.
And they'd fry these potatoes in there, and oh, were they good. They were, honestly, they were just, I tasted.
Yeah.
I tasted.
Their mouth waters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the bacon was crispy and,
Yep.
and it went through the potatoes and
Yep.
just to die for, I'm telling you. And
That's
we
all.
would the whole family, we'd eat potatoes like that would be our meal.
With a little bit of bacon.
Yeah. Honestly.
When did you guys get your first TV? Like, did you have your TV at the basement apartment you guys were renting in the 50s, or
We had
no?
when we were what?
Like, when do you think you got your first TV, you and Grandpa?
Oh, man. I couldn't tell you. I honestly couldn't. We had a TV in Beverly.
Sure, that was the big black and white one.
Big black and white one, right?
The first one that I remember.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, but I don't remember which
Because we
year.
moved that to the house on 60th.
Oh, okay.
66th. And then we on 63rd. And then in the late 70s, it was about 78 or 79, Mike Mann lent, because we couldn't afford one, but he lent my dad a color TV, but it was like what, I don't know,
A little one.
like 12 inches, like a 12-inch by 12-inch screen.
Yeah.
But that was a really big deal.
Big deal.
That was something.
It was a very big deal. 'Cause we
But yeah, that
colored.
big black and white one sat in the basement of our house with the rabbit ears on it. Oh man,
Yeah.
we used to watch all kinds of shit.
Yeah, really was.
Because I'm trying to remember what year I lived with you, Dad and Grandpa at the house there. It was like 2006,
Yeah,
2007, something in that neighborhood, right?
yeah,
And you and I would always watch Wheel of Fortune
yeah,
on like Thursdays or whatever,
yeah.
because we had channel 3, 5, 7, 11 was French, and 13.
Exactly. Exactly.
When did you go to Ukraine for the first time?
In 61.
You went in 61, so the year.
No,
Dad,
no,
Dad went in
80.
77 and I went in,
80.
I mean 81.
81.
What am I saying? Dad went in
You're never
77. He went for 6 weeks as holidays. He would take his holidays and go.
Oh, okay.
He was invited to speak.
Yeah. And so he went in 77, 78, 79, 80, and then in 81, he had permission from the Ukrainian government to let me go with him.
The Soviet Union at the time, right? Yeah.
Soviet Union at that time.
You needed permission to go.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah, I couldn't just go, no. You had to have permission from the government.
Yep.
And so I went. Mhm.
You used to have to get invited to come. So
Yeah.
Dad would get invited to come to speak, and then he would bring Mom.
Yeah, yeah. It was very different. It was, you know, it was really something because the very first time that I went was an experience like I don't think anybody has ever had,
Really?
really, because we went with 21 suitcases, if you can imagine. We came to the airport.
How did you get all the suitcases to the airport?
Um,
Somebody had a pickup truck or what?
Yeah, Leo Koronic and what was his name? Brinza, Ray Brinza, Olga and Ray Brinza. They had a truck and they took it the night before
Okay.
and they packed it into one container so that only one container came in.
There was a gentleman who worked at the international airport for Air
Yes.
Canada. His name was Dave Defane.
Uh-huh.
Dave Defane. Okay.
Dave Defane,
Uh-huh.
and Dave was
Made all the
the
arrangements.
cargo supervisor.
Right.
And so he would let us drive on the tarmac around the back into where they sorted the luggage.
Yep.
And he would bring out one of these great big weird shaped containers that would fit into the plane,
Right.
and we would stuff all of our stuff into this. He'd show us how to pack it so that it was completely full, and then he would put this container onto the plane because they have these different weird shapes because it fits the plane exactly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then he would put this on, and it would go all the way through until they got to
To Moscow.
Moscow,
Moscow.
and then it would get taken off, and then.
And then
But until then, it just went straight through. They never had to ever worry about their luggage until Moscow. It was absolutely
That
incredible.
sounds incredible.
But it was because people were coming off the plane. First of all, it was very interesting because I'd never been in like our airports are so wide open and everything, and it was just beautiful.
Right.
And there it was kind of dark, and anyway, but there was windows all over. There was windows all the way around, and the people were coming off the plane, and they would go like there was KGB right at the door.
With guns, eh?
3 KGB, yeah, and they were watching all the people go by, and I knew that.
That's some intimidating stuff right there.
That warned me, and so the people would go through the door, but they would all stand around. I guess they saw that we were coming, and we were so different from other people. They would bow to us and everything, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we were something else. So anyway, when we came down this ramp, and by that time, I was just terrified. All of a sudden, I got so scared. I thought, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? Why am I here? I was terrified because I saw there was 4 KGB. You could tell they were KGB people. They went and they brought a table and they put it on the side. And then as our suitcases were coming down, they started putting them onto the table and checking them, because all the people came off without a suitcase. I just saw, 4 corners in a blanket of some kind of something, people that have something over their back or something in their hand, but no suitcases.
Right.
And here they see all these suitcases coming down.
Yeah. And
Brother Commandant, I saw him, he's way beyond the people, and he's just walking back and forth, and I'm thinking, why are you not coming over here? He's the only person that I heard about. And
Oh, okay.
My dad knew him already.
A friend. Yeah.
Yeah. So they went, there's 4 KGB here, and the 3 by the door, and they started opening the suitcases. And Dad looked at me, and he bit his lip, like that. That was all. He was white. He was as white as could be. And I started to cry.
You got to keep a poker face together, Grandma.
Cry. And then all of a sudden I got such courage. Just get up, never mind crying, and go and start pulling those suitcases through. So here you can imagine, here's this table with these 4 KGB, Brother Commandant had to come down, and Dad, and they're looking through the suitcases, and I'm standing way up there, and just something told me, just go and pull the suitcases through. And you can imagine, totally open, with these guys there and me over there. I walked over, I'm walking right to the suitcase, and I'm checking it. Pull the suitcase, and I'm pulling it right past them. I pulled it right through, and that went so good. And then I'm looking, and here's this little man, bald-headed man. Just give it to him. Just give it to him. So I let him take it, and he pulled it right through the doors, through the KGB. Nobody saw.
Really?
God closed their eyes, I'm telling you. He pulled it through. I think he pulled it now. See, I'm trying to think now because it's been so long.
Sure.
I think it's either 12 or 13. No, it was 12. Because I to pull the 1, 2, 3, just not one after the other, but kind of waiting.
Right.
Because they would take one and they would be looking through it and stop and talking. And I went and pull another one through and another one through. And then finally there was a red one. And I thought, I gotta go get it. And I walked right up to it. like right here, just take it. And somebody says, don't take it. So I walked around and I went all the way back and went again.
Sit down, I can't see.
I wanted to take it, to pull it over, and something was stopping me, and I think I would have got caught.
Gotcha. What was in the suitcases?
Bibles and books.
Right.
And clothing and shoes, and everything was so needed in Ukraine at that time.
Right.
And that was my first trip, and Dad said, oh, they're so poor over there, Mary, you have no idea.
So you were going to give these suitcases away to people in general anyway, right? These were...
All the things, oh yeah.
They came back with literally like very
We
little.
gave everything away.
Right.
Just come back home, and then the next time we go, we take another whole bunch.
Yeah.
With us, yeah.
So what were the restrictions like then when it comes to literature and stuff like that?
We, Dad said I could have been in prison, and he could have been in prison. He really could have.
Oh, for a long time.
Really?
Yeah, because we brought in this literature. You had no rights bringing in Bibles or anything like that.
Right.
No way. And we had hundreds of literature.
There's
In
many
those
many
days.
people from the Soviet Union who spent years in prison for smuggling a Bible across.
A Bible.
Never mind like 50 and 100 and books and pamphlets and.
You know, every time Dad went, he would, well, he'd have to have a Bible because he was asked to speak
Yeah.
as a preacher. So he'd have, but then the pastors would say, look, I know you're going to leave your Bible here, but please just leave it someplace as if you've forgotten it. And we'll get it. So that's how we used to take the Bibles in.
Really?
Yeah, he would just pretend he forgot it, you know, he'd lay it down. And they were so happy to see a Bible, you know. It's amazing when you don't have it and you want it. I'll tell you, there's nothing more precious. You would give your soul for it.
Absolutely.
They used to write out Bibles
By hand.
by hand and songbooks by hand. You've seen them. Yeah.
Now, I do know that you were, or Dad was, the first one to get Bibles into the Soviet Union that were
Absolutely.
okayed by the government. What
Absolutely.
year was that? That was 5,000 Bibles. I remember that. They were printed in Winnipeg.
Yeah, we got them from all over. We collected them in Edmonton, but we collected them from Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Toronto, anybody
the
who
one
had
that they-
Bibles.
Okay, but what year was that?
So
It
you,
was in the 80s.
so you had to get these Bibles signed off by the Soviet Union
The
government.
Soviet Union government
Government.
agreed. My dad petitioned them with the help of Mr. Commandant, Mr. Commandant and Mr. Dohonchenko on behalf of the churches of Western Ukraine
Right.
to allow these Bibles in, and they finally agreed to allow 5,000. So he got together these 5,000. I've got a picture somewhere of them with all these boxes of these 5,000
Yeah,
Bibles. It's
yeah.
the first time of the Soviet Union that they ever allowed them in legally.
And so what's it about a Bible? What is it
Well-
that's so damning to the USSR at this time? Like what's so scary about the Bible for Soviet
Because
Union?
there's no God.
Oh, is that kind of
That's
right?
exactly what it is.
Right.
They didn't want to propagate. There's no God.
The only religion that's allowed is the Russian Orthodox or Russian Catholics, and they don't preach on a God. They preach on
The church, your
the
rules
church.
and
The
regulations.
church
and-
will get you into an afterlife.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, they didn't want us to propagate,
So this is-
telling people about Jesus and Jesus loves them.
So this is totally going against what
Oh, totally.
the Soviet
totally.
Union believes.
You couldn't give a Bible, and yet, how many we gave out? You have no idea, secretly. But somehow we got through with it. We never got once caught, not once, in all the years that we went.
and and like you said, you could have been thrown in prison.
I could have, yes.
Like and,
So, like I say, it was a real miracle.
and a Russian gulag, I would imagine, is not a fun place to be.
No. It was
So after 1981, your first time going to Ukraine, how many times did you go to Ukraine after that?
every year.
Every year?
Every year we went. We went every year. We would spend about 6 months. And then we'd have to come home.
Right.
And then we would do itinerary work. We would go visit different churches all over, wherever they sent us. The Canadian Baptist Ministries,
Oh, okay.
we worked under them. So they would send us, they would make arrangements for us to be in this church, that church, that church,
Right.
so we could collect money
Mm-hmm.
and send help to Ukraine, because we would come and we would share what we're doing and how we're doing it, and then afterwards when we set up a humanitarian center, we were feeding people, we were clothing people, and we need to have money for sending the containers, and the containers were 40 foot long.
Yeah.
They would
What would you fill those up with?
clothing, food, books, Bibles.
Really?
Yeah,
And how did you get all the stuff put in the container?
We would collect different places, Vancouver, Victoria, Kelowna, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Calgary. People, what we would go around telling people how we do it. People would bring clothing, like in Edmonton, for instance.
Right.
We would make sure we let everybody know we're collecting clothing for Saskatoon, to go to Saskatoon, to go to Ukraine. And they would pack it in boxes, different kinds of boxes, and then we would, when we had a large container, Kindersley used to take it from Edmonton on their trucks, take it to Saskatoon, and then in Saskatoon, they would pack all of these, they would first put it in a container that is not seaworthy.
Okay.
So they would fill it right up.
Okay.
And then when they know that it's totally full, they would get a seaworthy container, they would order it. They would come to Saskatoon, they would transfer all of that into a seaworthy container,
Okay.
and then we would send it off. And it costs from $8,000 to $10,000 each.
And you sent
It's
one
just
every
this-
year.
Oh, in the 10 years we sent from Canada 22 containers.
Way to go. and so every year,
And we had to collect that money.
absolutely, because every year you would go to Ukraine. Now when you
And those containers would go to where we set up our
seminary.
the seminary, yeah, and that's where the clothing would come.
Okay.
The container would come there,
Okay.
and then we would have to find a place in Lviv where we could store the stuff. So we had to have a great big building,
Right.
and then we would take all the boxes into there. Then we'd sort all the clothes again.
Yep.
The children, the ladies, the girls, the boys, the men, the workers, the whatever.
Right.
We would set it up, and we would know where everything is.
Yeah.
And then people would come. We would have a list of people coming, and they would have to have their name and address, where they're from, where they live. They would come, and we would give them 10 pieces of clothing for each person.
Really.
Yeah, and then when they had their 10 pieces of clothing, then the next person would come. And that's how we helped people. And we set up a soup kitchen, and we had about 250 people at the very beginning for quite a number of years. So we fed every day with soup and bread. And,
Really.
yeah. We did cooking, and yeah, it was so much fun. Of course, I was full of energy, and it was just, I enjoyed it.
So could you guys have gotten in trouble for the container of clothing
No,
and stuff like that, and the food and
no.
all that, or that was all sanctioned? That was allowed.
That was after the communism broke down.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have to worry about
Yeah,
them coming to confiscate it or anything like that. Okay.
no.
Yeah, Misha. What year did Grandpa meet Misha? Because from my understanding, Misha was Grandpa's bodyguard.
Yeah, but he was the second one. We had Misha Matsevko.
Okay.
Was the first one. Oh, he was a gem. If you told him you had to be at 4:45, he would be there at 4:30. He was so punctual. Never wanted to be late. Misha Matselko. We would bring money in. We never carried money with ourselves. We always gave it to Misha Matselko. He would keep a record to the very penny. One time he was out 2 pennies. He stayed up most of the night because he couldn't find it. That's the kind of a guy he was. That's Misha Matselko. And then
So he would. So I'm just curious. When you guys would come in, he
Yeah.
would meet you at the airport, kind of thing. And would you go stay with him, or?
No, we would stay in different apartments at the beginning.
And he would just come with you.
He would come, yeah. We would usually go to their place right after we get off the plane. We'd usually go to Matsevko's. They'd take us there. We would kind of relax. kind of, she'd always have pierogies and she'd have something to eat for us, wonderful soup or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we would kind of relax and the Huanchinpo would be there and coming down would meet us at the plane. And Matselco's always. And then somehow, I don't know how Misha Shamillo came on the scene. I think Misha Matselco got a job. I think he got a job that Dad had to have another person driving him around because that's one thing you couldn't drive. He would never drive there.
Really?
Oh no.
Why is that?
The roads were very narrow, cobblestones, narrow, and now apparently they've got cars and everything. I don't know. But at that time, there was no rules or regulations on the road. You know, you could kill somebody, and I don't know how people escaped many times, even with Misha driving, because he knew the places and everything very well.
Right.
But no, there's no way Dad would drive. No way.
Really?
Mm-mm.
So Misha was the driver.
Misha was the driver. He looked after everything. He would book us places to stay.
Mhm.
He would make sure that he would go to the coffee shop because you couldn't just walk into a coffee shop and sit down and order food at the beginning. At the beginning of times, everything had to be ordered ahead of time.
Really?
Yeah, there was nothing. We'd go, like say, we would go from one place to another, and we're supposed to be having breakfast or lunch in one place, and we would get there, we'd find that there is no food there.
Okay.
So then they would send us to another hotel, and then we would make sure that we get there. And I remember this one time, we were there, and all these Americans, they always call us Americans. They're Prutia, I don't know how to say that word in English. You're pushing your way through. Well, of course, I mean, we're hungry. I mean, we want to eat and we want to get going. What we have to do, you know, but they would use this word. Amerikanci. Kalicha Shura. Angry because we were trying to get some food. And there was no food. Many times there was no food.
Really?
Yeah, there wasn't. It would take a long time before it would come to the hotel. They would bring it from somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know where, but many, many, many times, like year after year until things got better. And then, like, we'd go to a store. There would be 3 levels, 4 levels. Great big store. We'd walk up the steps. And what you would see, you would just see anything and anything that was garbage, really. There would be jars of veggies, sealed. There would be some horse things that they need for horses. There would be some cloth somewhere laying, you know, rolled up. There would be on shelves. One time I walked in, I couldn't believe it. There were rows and rows and rows of buttons.
Buttons.
Yeah. It was just to fill up space. Yeah. It was so sad. Like they were 50. We were not so well off ourselves at that time. You know, I mean, we were poor. But I never saw anything like that. I mean, when I was growing up, I never saw that thing. It was like 50 years way back.
Really?
It seemed to me, yeah.
And especially coming from Canada
Yeah.
and going there and seeing a department store that's 3 levels tall of just junk
Yeah,
on the shelf.
nothing,
On the
nothing,
shelves.
Yeah. Junk, just junk. A lady one year, Bob and Grace Berry, went with us. Dad invited them to come with us because they were the ones that kind of oversaw our work from here. So he said, oh, I want to invite them and make sure they come. So they came, and her suitcase didn't come. It got lost. She never did get it. Do you know we walked in all the stores, wherever there was a store, to find something for her, and we couldn't find the thing for her.
Really?
You can imagine how bad it was. yet. She wore my clothes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you-
Bob Berry's wife of all things.
And you would come home with pretty much just whatever you have on your back.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, you couldn't leave people with nothing, you know?
Right.
They were so poor. Many ladies would wear a dress. Women all wore dresses. You couldn't wear slacks. This would be a crime if I would have been. Now they're wearing slacks. See, they kind of smartened up.
Yeah.
But at that time, you had to wear a dress. There was no way you could wear a pair of slacks. So they would wear a dress all week. They'd wash it, turn it back right side up, and they would wear it for Sunday. Because they had to have a clean, beautiful dress for Sunday. I'm telling you,
Grandma, I love you.
it was interesting.
I'd
Sounds
say.
interesting.
So I do have a question. So when did you find out you were a celiac?
Oh my goodness, that's another question. I wish I would have kept dates. I never was one for keeping dates. or
That's okay.
anything.
That's okay.
It has to be, let's see, more than 45 years, 47 years maybe.
There you go.
Okay.
Yes, I was,
So mid 70s, late 70s, somewhere in there.
yeah.
Okay. Because, you know, I have problems with my guts and I'm running to the bathroom and all that stuff. You were doing mission trips to Ukraine. Everything's made with flour. Bread, pierogies, naleshliki, everything.
Yeah.
How did you manage that?
You know, I tell you, it was only by the grace of God. But at the time when I got celiac, the only thing I could find to have was the rice cakes.
Yeah.
You know, and that's all. And they were not flavored either. They were just regular rice cakes. And we used to take a suitcase full for me. And that's what I used to nibble on. But I would have rice and potatoes. I literally lived on rice and potatoes. And meat,
Sure.
you know, fruit, whatever we could get it, vegetables. But I had like nothing, none of that stuff that you mentioned, nothing. No pastries, nothing, if I did. And there were no bathrooms around.
I was about to say, because it's
Oh.
Ukraine in the early 80s. Like,
Oh,
it'd be an outhouse, I'm assuming.
there was just many times a hole in the wall, a hole in the whole ground,
Really?
really and truly. No kidding.
How did you do
You
it?
know, the first time we went to the airport, this is the airport, I have to go to the bathroom so bad. Gotta go to the bathroom, so I asked brother coming down to where the bathroom was. So he showed me way out far, and I thought to myself, but anyway, I went, and as I come closer, I knew there was a bathroom, because it smelled like a bathroom. Like from a long distance, and I walked all the way there, and this is what it was. You have to understand this. It was a little partitions with a curtain drawn across and a hole.
And so you just squat.
That's it. And that was, I tell you, a lot of churches, that's the way it was. They just have a wall around the hole, and you would squat. You didn't see a toilet for many years after.
Really?
Yeah. Then finally, we saw a church with a toilet in it. It was amazing. You would just squat. You had to, because what else are you going to do? And if you were on the road anywhere, there was nothing in restaurants. You had to go in the bush.
Really?
Really?
No flush.
No,
Just take a roll of TP with you.
that's right. We took a lot of toilet paper with us. Because the toilet paper that they had was as big as this. Honest. smaller, like this. It was like this, and it was like smooth, like a smooth piece of paper.
Oh yeah.
And that was your toilet paper. If you went anywhere to go to that hole and you asked for paper, that's what you got. One little piece of that shiny paper. I even at that time, the first time, I brought a package of it home to show the kids. I don't know whatever happened to it. But no kidding, that's all it was. And in homes, if you went to a home, there would be a hole and there would be newspaper.
Newspaper.
No kidding, and it would be just thrown in a corner.
Just
If you didn't like them, you would throw in a corner.
and then once a month they go broom it up or what?
I don't know how often you clean it up. I would imagine every day. But honestly, there would be newspaper used to wipe your bum, and it was just thrown in a corner, and really,
So it must have been a relief to come back to Canada.
it was. I'm sorry, I have to tell you this horrible thing, but honestly, that's the way it was.
Absolutely. And so how long were your trips on average to Ukraine? Like a couple weeks, 2 months, or
No, about 6 months.
really?
We would go for about 6 months, and then we'd come home,
Yep.
and then we would do deputational work, and then we would go back.
Really?
Yeah,
Especially the 80s would have been a crazy busy time for you guys because
it was.
Grandpa was the chapel minister of the Edmonton Eskimos in the 80s. You guys would be in Ukraine for months and months and months at a time. Then you come back and that gets pretty much football season.
Exactly. I tell you, yeah,
Because that is probably your second love besides your family in your life is football.
exactly. I love football. And it's really funny because the very first time he asked me to go to football, he asked me, John Wojtek and him always went to football, always. And this one time John couldn't go with him. So he begged me and begged me and begged me. I came home from work. I was dead tired, And when he took me to the hockey game, I fell asleep during the hockey game because I had no interest.
Yep.
But football was really something because it was very cold that day. He said, Mary, I'm going to take a blanket. I'll wrap you up. You'll see. You'll enjoy it. Please come with me. He begged and finally I said, okay, I'm going to go. And do you know what? I saw that game. I was so taken up by the football that I just didn't want to stay home after that. I always wanted to go. I just loved it. I learned. It just came to me naturally. I've never been there before. The first time, and it just.
When would you say your first football game with Grandpa was? When do you think?
It was winter. It was very cold. I was wrapped up in this quilt. And we both wrapped up in it because it was so cold.
Absolutely.
But
Was this in the 80s or late 70s?
I don't know.
Early 70s, about 72.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that neighborhood?
Because Grandpa was already involved with the Eskimos in 74
Yeah.
when they won the Grey Cup. And so this would have been about 71, 72.
No, like I said, I didn't remember dates. I never ever took. Some people just take.
And that's okay.
But I know that it was a day that I'll never forget.
And the real question that has to be answered: how many times in a summer or throughout a year would the Edmonton Eskimos be over at your and Grandpa's place eating barbecue or over for dinner? Or how many times a year do you think you'd have the football team over at your guys' house?
Well, the whole for the 10 years that he was from 77 to 85.
Yeah.
Our place was their home, kind of.
So once a week, once every 2 weeks or something. How did
Once a week.
How did you feed these people?
It's not easy.
It was not easy. All of my income, I think, was going for the football players. No kidding. My kids were off to the side. Well, no, we tried. I don't know how I honestly, my life has been like this. Because I had to work for 9 hours every day.
Yep.
And by the time I came home, it'd be 10 hours because by the time I got to work and back, and
Sure.
8 hours work and 1 hour for lunch, we had to have lunch. So I was away for 10 hours a day.
Yep.
Every day.
Yep.
And then there was church.
Yep.
And then there was choir. And there was prayer meetings.
Yep.
I never missed any. I had to be there. I had to be there. Because I just had to be there. I had to do all the laundry, all the cleaning of the house, looking after. I didn't look after my kids. I don't know how. I don't know. Don't ask me. It's only by the grace of God. Honestly, I mean it. And I cry many times. I think, why did I have to do that? Why did I have to go to work every day? Why did I have to leave my kids?
I can promise you they're not angry at you for it.
I hope not.
Because there's the famous story of Ron Este that I've been told that Ron drove this little dinky Volkswagen or whatever, and Volvo, sorry, and I met Ron. Ron's like 6'5", 6'6", but 300-pound heavy Louisianian accent, and Dad and Aunt Darlene were in the living room the one day, just whatever, and watching TV, and up comes this Volvo, out comes Ron, he comes up the walkway, comes into the front door, walks past Dad and Auntie Darlene, doesn't even say hi, doesn't acknowledge them, doesn't wave, nothing, goes to the kitchen. Dad says he's rumbling around in there for like 5-6 minutes, comes out with this great big sandwich, like this ridiculously huge sandwich, and the only thing he says is, "I hate to eat and run," and out the door, back into the Volvo, and off to football practice.
Home from football.
Home from football practice.
Yeah, well, like I say, they made our place their home. And it was just natural for them to be there. And there's nothing you could say or do,
And Auntie Darlene and I were just stunned because he never even said hello. Just walked straight through, went into the kitchen, was making himself this big sandwich, and then was walking on. Then he looked, and then he said, "Yeah, I hate to eat and run," and that was all. And Darlene and I just looked at each other,
and there you go.
Right?
Yeah, because our doors were always open.
Absolutely.
We never locked our doors.
Absolutely. So with the Eskimos, where would you usually sit for the football games? Like, you guys, I'm assuming, had season tickets, or like?
Yeah, we did. No, we didn't have season tickets, but we always got tickets. I don't know how Dad got them. I have no idea about that.
We did have season tickets.
Maybe, yeah,
When Commonwealth Stadium was made,
Yes, yes.
we had season tickets. When it was still Clark Stadium, we just got tickets wherever.
Wherever, okay.
But when they opened it up, Commonwealth Stadium, then all of the players' wives got a section to sit in. And
Right.
we got these seats through the Players Association, so we could sit. That's why we were only 2 rows up, sitting right behind the bench, so we could yell at the guys and everything. That's why. It's because of all the players' wives.
Now, did you ever take a player to the sideline and start yelling at him from the stands that he wasn't performing the way you knew he could perform?
You're kidding. Sit me down.
You never went and took their helmet and said, "Give me your shoulder pads. I'm going in for you."
But there is a cute story. There is a very cute story. At the time, Tom Wilkinson was still our #1 quarterback.
Yes. Oh,
And,
he was so
and
good.
Bruce Limmerman came in as our backup quarterback, and we were trying to groom him into becoming our first string quarterback.
Right.
And there's a story because Mom sat right next to Bridget Limmerman, Bruce's wife.
His wife. Okay.
And there's a very cute story about that. So get Mom to tell you about that, because that was very cute. Because they would never give Bruce a chance.
Well, that she was crying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
In the wives section.
yeah. Well,
Because everybody would be saying,
Booing.
no,
They're-
but actually we were not booing Bruce,
they were.
but those other people were, but we weren't, because we were sitting by Bridget, you couldn't possibly do that. So we'd say say nice things, but she said, Why are they booing Bruce? He's so good. I don't know.
Trying so hard.
He's trying so hard. I don't know why they booing him.
Was he a lousy quarterback?
No,
He was not.
he became a very, very
He
good.
became a very good quarterback.
But this is when he you have to understand he didn't know anything about the Canadian game.
Yeah, he probably came from
Right-
college,
Yeah, so
right out of college ball in the States, right?
and nobody and you see the other thing was too Bruce was a more of a shotgun type passer.
Right.
Sat back in the pocket, fired off bullets. And Tom Wilkinson was this fat, dumpy little quarterback who used to like lob the ball in the air. There's always this huge arc, and he couldn't get. And of course, Bruce was like, "We don't play the same game." you know?
No.
And so he had a very difficult time transitioning, and the people would boo him like, "Oh, we're so used to Tom Wilkinson and all these crazy, 50 yards, 75 yards in the air passes."
Yeah.
And Bruce couldn't do that, and so the people were on him so bad. And at that time, in Commonwealth Stadium, we had many times it was sold out, so 65,000
Oh, yeah.
people
Yeah.
Yeah.
sold out, and everybody is like, and Bridget is crying like crazy.
She ran away to the car one day.
Yeah,
She just couldn't take it anymore. I thought, I'm so sorry for her. Because she could not take that booing anymore. She said, "Why are they booing my husband? He's so good." And she ran to the car. Oh, I tell you. What can you do? That's the way life is. Full of fun, full of crying, full of all kinds of things. Oh, it was nice, yeah. They had a lot of Bible studies at our place with the Eskimos. Every week they had Bible study on Friday nights. They'd come over and we'd have coffee and all kinds of pastries and stuff,
Sure.
just like, and make them feel at home. And many of them came to know the Lord. Grandpa baptized a number of them.
Ron Nix's house.
Yeah.
Betcha. Bruce and Bridget, remember me got baptized out there?
Yeah.
Stu Lang,
Yeah.
Dale Potter.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, so many of them.
So many.
And on a completely different note, I don't know if you know the origins of the game of Rook, but because like we weren't like a crib household or anything like that. Like it was always Rook.
Yep.
When did you learn Rook? who found Rook? Like was it you or Grandpa or?
It had to be about the time I was born because literally I remember being about 4 or 5 years old and sitting on like laps and getting taught how to play this game. So I remember very first time was in our house in
Like I said again,
63.
I know we really enjoyed it. There was a lot of us who would get together and we would play Rook and
Yeah.
different groups.
Yeah.
Like we'd have maybe
White Ducks.
3, White Turks and Marilyn and Ken.
Yep.
You know who I mean?
Yep.
Olga and Ray brings the different ones, and we would.
And the Petrushkos too.
Yeah,
Peter and Lil
Peter,
Petrushka.
yeah.
Yes.
So we used to get together. We'd have maybe like card tables.
Yeah.
We would set them up, and then there'd be 4 here, 4 here, 4 here, and then screaming and hollering. You win.
Tell us about the time that you and some other suspects that shall not be named purposely rigged the deck to give Grandpa no higher cards than a 12 on purpose just to see what he would do.
Remember that, Mom? That was when we moved into that house when we built the house in Spruce Grove. And you guys came over and we were sick and tired of Grandpa taking the bid no matter what. And so we rigged the deck, remember that?
Yes, I do.
And we were all in on it except for Grandpa. Everybody was in on it. And we literally made it so that he would get nothing higher than, I think, an 11.
It was just.
Like it was just like the most pathetic hand you'd ever seen, and he bid like 160 with it.
You would never let anybody bid.
And it was like, no, you got nothing. How are you doing?
Why are you bidding? But he would bid.
And you know what Grandpa used to say, and you can ask Grandma, it's the truth. He used to say, I was betting, like you know how you would say, I'm betting heavily on the kitty.
Yeah.
I'm betting heavily on my partner.
Because I was,
Yeah, I guess,
because you taught me how to play rook, all of you guys, but
of course.
and I was bored one day like 10 years ago, and I grabbed the rook cards. I counted all the points, and it only goes to 180. I didn't know that there was like 20 special points that you give for getting the most tricks. So I remember the first time that I won ever against Grandpa. It was you, Dad, Grandpa, and myself. And I remember I won first to 500 or whatever. And for me to win, Grandpa pushed me to 185. There's only 180 points in a freaking deck, so I had to be a perfect hand. I've never had to bid to 185 when I was like 13 to take it from Grandpa.
Yeah, oh, that was fun.
And Grandpa probably still only had a 14 high.
Yeah, exactly.
Why?
It was just-
I was told when you guys stacked that deck that there was conversations of, well, maybe we should give him a 13. And someone spoke up and said, do not give him a 13. That's at least 150 points
Oh,
right
yeah.
there.
I don't know how we managed to do it, but we did it. Yeah, I do remember that incident. I do. But he would never
He went to the washroom or something, and we all stacked the deck
Yeah.
and said, okay, let's see him bid now, you know. And he still did. He still bid like 160 or 165. It was ridiculous.
And we knew he had nothing.
Yeah, and all of us knew he had nothing.
Oh, funny.
So out of all the accomplishments and great things you've done in your life, is there anything else that you can think of that we haven't even talked about yet? Yeah, you got a beautiful family. You worked your butt off at Safeway, all the mission trips to Ukraine, the Edmonton Eskimos, the travel, the vacations you and Grandpa went on, the cruises. Like,
Oh, we had a lot of fun. Yeah, we went on a lot of cruises. We had a lot of fun. Each one was very different, but it was a cruise.
Yeah.
Different places you go to.
Did he ever ask you at all about our trip to South America?
No.
no, I didn't even know.
Yeah, we did go to South America, and that was in 72.
Okay.
72.
72. Okay.
Yeah.
You and Grandpa, or you Grandpa and the kids?
Daniel.
And Darlene.
And Darlene.
And there was about 20 others.
There was, yeah.
Oh, like a really big group trip,
We
eh?
made a group from here, from Saskatoon, from Winnipeg, and we all went down, and there was a Ukrainian conference of evangelical Baptist youth
Yeah.
in Argentina,
Argentina.
Buenos Aires, Argentina.
And how was that?
But that was a wonderful.
That was so cool.
Oh, it was cool.
What time of the year ish?
It was winter here,
Winter.
which was summer there.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
perfect. It was like February here or so. So it's summer, middle of the summer.
Oh, it was just unbelievable. It was
But
wonderful.
do you remember anything about, okay, we had to get shots.
Yeah.
Oh, for like malaria and all that, I guess,
We
right?
had to
Yeah,
go-
yeah.
We had to go for, I think, 3 weeks
Yeah, we had
and to get a massive amount of shots to be able to
Yeah.
go. So there were times where you get them in your bum and you literally couldn't walk for a couple of days. Your
Yeah.
leg was just all, and or if you got it in your shoulder, you couldn't move your
Yeah,
arm.
because we had to have all these shots.
Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause
And then we almost didn't land up going. Do you remember that?
and why was that? Jog my memory.
It had something to do with me and my appendix.
That's right. That's right.
And I had acute appendicitis, and my appendix almost exploded. And so I had to go to the doctor, the hospital,
Yeah.
the whole bit.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then miraculously, only a few days before we left, it just went away.
Yeah.
And we were able to go on our trip.
Yeah, you could have just locked him in his room and just went anyway, right? You know, it's-
I was 11
He
years
was
old,
12.
or
You were
10.
12 years old?
Yeah, so I thought we went 74, but
No, it
maybe
was
it
72.
could have been
so he
70.
would have 10. That's still
Yes,
about
so with that, for some reason, I remember. And we went to see What was
We went to see President Peron.
Peron?
We went to see, when we went to Paraguay, we saw President Stroessner. Yeah, no, we did. We actually
We
got.
did. We actually talked to them in person.
And not
Really?
Yes.
not only that, but my dad went and got like that set of eggs.
Yeah,
Okay, so
But
he made these two egg things exactly like this, except this one's oblong, and
They
the other
were
ones
made
were
little
exactly like shaped.
different.
And they said from the Ukrainian Ukrainian evangelical churches of Western Canada
Yeah,
to the president, to President Peron, to President Stroessner, from us, and we got an audience with the
with
president.
the presidents
And at this time, President Peron was starting to get really kind of weird. And I don't know if you've ever read about President Peron.
Never.
Ava Peron, read about them. That's quite an interesting story right there. But we actually got an audience with him. And then President Stroessner of Paraguay brought us into his office. We stood, and his office has a great big index, a big circular index. It's a huge desk, probably like 12 feet across.
Really?
Massive desk. And he sat in his desk, and myself and David Piatocha, we got to stand in this little thing, like right next to the president. And he not only talked to us through our interpreter, but he offered us, and it was so stupid,
Oh.
he offered us for his military, he brought in his top military general, and told him by helicopter to take all of us and take us on a tour of his beautiful country.
Yeah,
And our interpreter didn't understand quite what he was saying, and he refused it. He turned him down.
can
And
you
afterwards-
believe it?
Did you fire this bum, Grandma?
And afterwards, we were asked by reporters, "What is wrong with you? You turned the president down? Like he's offering you
Offered
to
us
take
this
you and show you
Plane,
the
a
country."
plane to all over. And he turned it down. He didn't understand.
He did. Yeah, he didn't understand what he was saying. He was so flustered with the fact that he's the president of the country, and he talked quite fast, and he didn't understand him, and he turned him down.
Yeah, honestly.
And how did you find out that he turned him down? Like, how did you?
A reporter.
The reporter,
A reporter was in
Why
the
didn't
room listening to the conversation.
why didn't you accept the
He said he.
tour that the president was?
And my dad says, "What tour? What are you talking about?" And then he told him, "Well, that's why he brought in his general. He promised to take you all over the country, show you this beautiful country, and take you by helicopter."
Yeah, and this was the four of us, Darlene and Daniel and Dad and I, and Pasecas,
And Mr. and Mrs. Paseka and
Yeah.
Sam and Dave.
and Sam and David, yeah. And he refused. He didn't know what he was talking about. And he's the one that spoke in their language.
Right.
Like he understood. I don't know what.
Where did you find this interpreter? Was he just assigned to the?
No.
Oh, you get to hire him? Or?
He is the guy we went down with. He came from there. He lived in Buenos Aires, and he came and they moved to Edmonton from Buenos Aires, and he was part of our church. He became our
Assistant
pastor. And then when we went down for this conference, he was our big interpreter.
And he was a very poor interpreter of you.
How long did you rib the poor guy that he turned down the first?
Forever. Because I remember when you were with me, we went to a football game, and remember that church that we used to park at and walk to the stadium?
Didn't we jump on a train?
No.
No,
But when we would park at the church and just walk the 3 blocks, that church is a Ukrainian church, and he lived right across the back alley. And many times we were there, and he was with us. And I said, "Yeah, we get to park here because you couldn't understand this president and all that." So that was many years later.
Yeah. When Dennis got sick, he was just four years old. That was when we got our very first Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Dad, we were in Round Valley. We lived in Round Valley in a garage,
Green.
in a green room. It was made into a house.
Oh, okay.
We divided it, and it was a house, but we lived in it. And Darlene was there already. She was very little. She was not even a year.
Yeah.
And Dennis was the one that got sick. Anyway, Dad went into Edmonton to pick up the car because he already had ordered this Volkswagen. And he went into town, and I stayed home with the kids, of course, and everything was fine. He never come home right away. He, for some reason, got delayed in town, and he stayed in town for, I think, almost 2 days. What it was all about, I don't remember, but in the meantime, Dennis got very, very sick. And I can see that he's getting, the second day, he is almost delusional. Like, he's not thinking right. He's little. And I'm holding him. I'm covering him. It was winter time, cold like crazy. And I made an arrangement with my neighbor half a mile away that if any time I had any problems, I had a cloth on the line because I had a clothesline to dry the clothes. But she didn't see the cloth hanging on the clothesline because I wanted her to come over. When I'm having a problem, come over. So that was our way of communicating. So anyway, the cloth is there and she's not coming, and Dennis is just literally hot, burning. He's not crying, but he's just getting out of my arms. I can't hold him anymore. He's 4 years old, just about 4. And finally, there was all day, all night, all next day, and Alex is not coming home. Lord, I'm praying, please, where is my Alex? Please come home. Dennis is dying. And I'm really praying to God. I said, please, Lord, help me with him. And he's just tearing out of my arms, and I can't let him go. I've got no place to let him go in this little tiny place. I'm holding him in bed. And finally, towards evening, I hear a car. And I knew it was him because no cars were ever coming that way. And the car is coming, and thank you, Jesus, thank you, Jesus. So I left him on the bed, and I jumped out into the snow because it was not thrown away, and I ran to the road. I said, Alex, come, Dennis is dying. I really did. He literally was dying. And I didn't know what was wrong. So I wrapped Darlene up in a blanket and Dennis in a quilt. Dad come running. We picked him up. We ran to the car. We took half a mile away. We took Darlene to Piatocha, Sophie Piatocha. She was supposed to look after her. And we went to, what is that place called? Where there was the doctor there.
Spirit? Was it the Spirit River? Or
No, by Ron, like, it was about, what is the name of that place? Not far. Anyway, we went there. We knew Dr. Brooks, because anytime Dad or anybody got sick, we knew that Dr. Brooks was the doctor. There was only one doctor there. So we got into there, and the doctor looked at Dennis, and he says, oh, my children, he says, I'm going to give him a needle. We didn't know what for or anything. He said, I'm going to give him a needle, and it's only good for 1 hour. Go to Edmonton. I will prepare everything. I will prepare everything for you. Just go to the Royal Alec Hospital. Just don't stop for anything. If a police stops you, don't stop. Just go, because it's only 1 hour. And he said, otherwise he might not make it. But we had to stop off for Darlene, because I didn't know how long we'd be in the hospital. So we stopped, and here she was playing in a coal bin. She was just filthy in the coal bin. We just grabbed her the way she was. There was no time to wash her, nothing. We just wrapped her up and took her to the car. And we're going to Edmonton. Sure enough, we came. The doctor, nurses were standing at the door. Dr. Harry Wineloss. wonderful doctor. He grabbed him just the way he was, and he ran up wherever he went. And this was already coming quite late in the evening, and he's not coming back. And we dropped Darlene off. Alex got the phone in the hospital and phoned Darlene because she lived in Edmonton.
Who?
Darlene.
She called. He called. Somebody called Darlene.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
He called somebody named Darlene? No. He called Uncle, was it Uncle
No, she's
Dave,
not-
was it Uncle Dave and Auntie Sonia or?
I can't
somebody
remember who
like
it
that?
was now.
Oh,
No, Nettie and John lived in
there
Edmonton.
we go.
Yeah.
Nettie and John.
Yeah, it was Auntie Nettie and Uncle John.
So you dropped your little city baby off there.
Little city baby, yeah.
He phoned
Little baby.
Nettie, and he said, "Come pick up Darlene." And she said, "Where are you?" And she's in the hospital with Dennis. She came and she picked her up. She didn't say anything. But then later she said, "Why was she so dirty?" She was just dirty black. We brought this child. Anyway, so what kind of orphans they are. So anyway, with Dennis, the doctor just grabbed him. And because I guess the doctor, Brooks, told him I guess he told him what was wrong, what he thought was wrong. Anyway, he took him, and we're waiting, and an hour, and 2, and 3, and 4, and it's night. And he's not coming, he's not telling us where Dennis is, what is happening. And finally in the morning he was with him all night long. And Dr. Weinglass, God bless him, he came to us and he put his arms around us and he said, "Children, do you pray?" We said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, pray." Because he said, "I did everything I could possibly do for him, but it's only God can give him his life." So then he said, "Come, you can come with me and I'll show you him." We went in there and he had tubes all over. He had a ruptured appendix and the poison was going through his whole system. And somehow God saved his life. We prayed. But he got out of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, obviously.
God is good. Yeah.
And how long did he stay in the hospital for?
Oh, I can't remember the days, but I know he stayed a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple weeks or?
I don't think it was a couple of weeks, but it must have been quite a number of days.
Right.
I would say 7, 8 days maybe.
Jeez, eh?
And then we would go back and forth and we would stay in the hospital all day with him. And, oh, he was sick.
Absolutely.
We thought that he was dead. He was just laying there with tubes all over and needles all over and in his arms, his legs, his stomach, it was horrible. But God gave his life back. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then
He got diabetes.
I was about to say, now was that a result of that, or was that a completely different incident altogether?
Oh, it's a totally different.
Totally different incident. Okay.
This was, he had his appendix ruptured.
When he was 4, yeah.
Yeah.
Poisoning.
And the poison went through his whole system. And like the doctor said, "Children, if you do pray, we'll never forget those words." And we said, "Yes, we do." And he said, "We'll pray," because he said, "What man could do, I did." He said, "Only God can give him his life." I learned in 72, got my license. But no, it was good. I just remember one time, it was the very first time I took the car, and I took you with me. And I thought I'll just go a very little ways. And I forget where we went. But both him and I are in the car, and he's little. He's just a little guy. And I ran out of gas. I'm trying to start the car, and I can't. And I prayed. I prayed. And I said, Lord, I need to get home. Please help me. And do you know what? I started the car and I got home with him. There was no car in the gas in the car.
And then Grandpa was probably mad that he had to walk to the store to get gas.
I don't know what it is, but yeah. And another time, I didn't lose. It was funny. I came from work. I drove in, and Auntie Nettie came right behind me to our place for some reason. I drove in, and here Nettie came. And she came into the house with me. And I usually came, and I dropped the keys on the table. That was just natural. I always did that. Anyway, I put the keys on the table and we were talking, and I don't know what all we were doing. We were made coffee right away, of course, and I don't know why she came. I don't remember, but anyway, what happened is towards Matthew went home, and all of a sudden Dad has to go somewhere, and we just had the one keys. And he's looking for the what did I do with my keys? What did I do? I left them on the table. They're not there. Look all over. In the garbage already, looking in the garbage. Every pocket, everything is turned around. Dad is angry with me. What did you do with the keys? 11 o'clock. I am on my knees. I am so upset. Finally, I went and I said, Lord, you can see and I was going to say, you can see the keys. You know exactly where they are. I didn't quite finish that. And the words came to me, Nancy took them. So,
A little thief.
I got up off my knees, 11 o'clock. Of course, Dad didn't go anywhere. He was angry. And I thought, Nancy took the keys. I heard this voice. And I thought, well, I can't phone her now. It's too late. I'm going to phone the first thing in the morning. So, of course, she wasn't working. So I figured she'll be so upset when I call because she liked to sleep in. But I'm phoning at 8 o'clock in the morning. I said, Nancy, did you happen to take my keys? She said, what in the world would I do with your keys? I said, I don't know. But I said, look and see in your pockets if you have my keys. She looked in the pocket. She said, yeah. She said she took it, hers and mine, and went home.
And then she was even more mad that she had to come to your house at 8:30 to drop the keys off.
No, I don't know how we picked them up, I guess somehow. Maybe she did come. She had to have. Because but honestly, it was just simple. Lord, you know exactly where those keys, the voice, Nancy took them. Honestly, if you can believe it.
Speaking of hearing voices and stuff, why don't you tell them the story of 1969? What happened?
Grandma?
Yeah.
Mm,
I know it's not a great story, but it's a good story.
Oh, that's a horrible story.
It is. But it's a good story too, because it was a good story with you.
That's why we're here.
What happened is, Grandma got sick. Grandma got very, very sick in Benito, Manitoba.
This is
My grandma.
Your grandma.
No.
Your mom.
Dad's mom.
Okay, so grandpa's mom. Okay.
Grandpa's mom.
Right.
And we had made arrangements that I would go with him because Grandma is so sick that I have to help her. So he said, we'll both go. And then the last minute, everything changed. The kids couldn't go to Mattie's. She couldn't come to our place. Mary, this is exactly what Dad said to me. He said, you know what, Mary? He said, you stay home. Because he says, you never know what could happen. So something might happen, you'll be sorry for the rest of your life. You stay home with the kids. So I had to resolve myself to staying home. So I stayed home. And he said, I'm going to come on Wednesday. He said, because he needed a couple of days in Benito. By the time he got there, he needed to fix a few things at the house.
He took Auntie Sonia with him.
And he took Auntie Sonia with, because Auntie Sonia's mom lived next door to each other. So she could visit with her mom. And then she would kind of help my mom, my dad's mom,
Yeah.
if she needed anything. So that was good. So I thought, oh, that's good. So they went. And then this was Monday. And I thought, my mom, I say my mom, she was my mom.
It's okay.
She was perfectionist with it. When it came to house cleaning and that, it had to be perfect, absolutely perfect. And I knew that. And I thought,
As a matter of fact, sorry, Mom, just to stop you there, but just to make them understand what a perfectionist she was, Grandma Piatocha had a dirt floor, okay? And she used to mix up water and soap and make it and wash the dirt so it became like concrete. And you could literally eat off of her dirt floor. I'm not joking, I'm dead serious.
she was a perfectionist.
Yeah, she was a perfectionist.
She really was. And I knew that. And I thought, well, she's coming to my house. And I'm working every day.
Yeah.
I go to work and she's going to be here. She'll be cleaning. She'll be doing all kinds of things. So I thought, no, I'm going to get the house just absolutely perfectly clean. And I thought I'll start in the kitchen.
Yep.
And this was the second day. This was Tuesday. He went on Monday. This was Tuesday. And I sent Daniel and Darlene into the park. I said, you go and play, and I'm going to stay in the house. I need to do the work. So I thought I'll start with my cupboards. That's the first thing Mom will notice. So I got on my knees, I got my water and everything on the floor like I would, and I pulled all the pots and pans out of the cupboard, and I put them on the floor beside me. And then I went and I took the cloth and I crawled inside the cupboard and I'm wiping everything down. And I hear this voice, Mary, Alec was coming home today. No, yeah, and Mother will never see these cupboards again.
But don't worry.
Yeah.
But don't worry.
Everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to be all right. I just almost froze. And I crawled out. You know how you're on your knees the way inside, and I crawled out. And I thought, oh, what a horrible thought. And I sat there on my knees for a while, and then I thought, oh, I'm going to wash the cupboards. So I crawled back in, and I'm just ready to wash. Mary, Mother will never see these cupboards again, but everything is going to be all right. Honestly, I got up off my knees, I turned around, I said, somebody came to the house, and they're talking to me. I turned around to look if somebody came in to tell me something. Nobody's there. And I thought, oh my, what in the world is going on? I have to phone Nancy and tell her, what is going on? I don't know what to do. Anyway, I shoved all those pots and pans back into the cupboard. And I'm walking around in a daze. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to think. Lord, what's happening? Is Alec going to have, what is going on? Why is Mother not going to see these cupboards again? Is she going to die or what? I had no idea. And I didn't know how to tell Nancy because I thought she'll say, Mary, you've gone crazy. What's wrong with you? You know, because just all of a sudden like that. But it was so real. It was real. I heard the voice. And then I thought, no, I just can't tell. I can't tell her. So I go on my knees and I'm praying the words. that beautiful voice, Mary. Really, Alec was coming home today, and he's had a very big accident, but everything will be all right. I got up on my knees, and I just don't know what to think. Where can I go? What can I do? What can I tell the children? I don't know what to do. I'm crying. I'm begging God, please, please save Alec from an accident. And way into the evening already, it was late. I just thought to myself, and I prepared Mother's bed where she's going to stay at the house. I prepared it really nicely in the spare bedroom. And all of a sudden I said to Dennis, because Dennis was older already, and I said, you know what, Dennis, he started to cry for some reason. I don't know whether, I have to ask him if he knew something or if he heard a voice or what, I don't know. But I said, you know what, Dennis, I prayed with him and I said, you sleep here on Grandma's bed. You know, like as if she's not coming. Anyway, I tucked him into bed and I just went, and it was about 11 o'clock. And I just fell on my knees and I'm praying. I said, oh Lord, the same voice again, Mary. Alec was coming home today and he had a very big accident, but everything will be okay. I fell across the bed and I'm crying and the phone rings and Alec is on the phone. And he said, Mary, I'm in the hospital. And I said, I know. He said, he was shocked.
What do you mean you know?
How do you know? Anyway, I knew that he had a big accident. So anyway, how did I get to the hospital?
Remember Uncle Alec?
Uncle Alec or Dennis?
I think it was Uncle Alec, because I know you phoned Uncle Alec right after that.
Yeah,
And
must have
Uncle
been.
Alec had the same kind of experience, because what happened when you phoned Uncle Alec? What did he say?
Yeah, he said
What hospital are they in?
at the Royal Alec.
No, but he said, what hospital are they in? That was the question he asked you, and you hadn't even told him
No,
about the accident yet.
yeah, that's right. That's right. And I said, Alec had an accident. Anyway, they were at the Royal Alec. I don't know the details exactly. But anyway, we got to the hospital and they were just wheeling Mom through. The nurses were just running with her. And I saw her head was huge. Her head was huge. And I thought, oh no. And Alec is all bruised up. And he said, how did you know? I said, I knew that you had an accident. I didn't explain. But he was all bruised up so bad. His chest, his
Face.
legs. Anyway, and they wouldn't let me go to see her. That was one thing. I'm crying, I'm begging. You can't go in, just Alec and Matthew can go in to see her. So I never did see Mom alive. But I remember about 6 months after, I cried every day. I was crying all the time that I didn't see her. I came home from work. I drove up. I drove up with a car, and here underneath the door, like we had 2 doors, and I always parked on that side. And there was Mom's one house shoe. Well, if I didn't start crying. And then, then I cried so hard. And I remember going to bed. This is terrible. I went to bed to sleep, and in the night I'm dreaming. I'm dreaming that Mom sat up in her grave, and I can see her. I know I'll see her that way. She was so perfect. She was just sitting there, she sat up and she said, and flowers, just flowers all over. And she said to me, Mary, you didn't come to me when I needed you. And now you came crying. You go home to your children. And don't come crying to me no more. And you know, since then I can't cry for her.
Really?
Really. She scolded me, said, you go back to your children. She said, you didn't come when I wanted you to come to me. She just scolded me with her high voice, the way she always talked. I can just hear her voice.
So obviously so Grandpa was in this accident. So
He had a hard time driving after that.
Well, he was driving, obviously, and then a car full of teenagers who had been drinking all night. They were coming down the highway just by Sherwood Park.
Yeah.
And he was coming into the city, and they decided, they had gone too far, so they're going to pull a U-turn. And of course, they pulled a U-turn right in front of Dad. And Dad's going like 70 miles an hour, and there was no way to stop, so he slammed right into the side of their car, T-boned their car, pushed it into the ditch. I know a couple of the kids died in that car. And my aunt was sleeping in the back seat, so Auntie Sonia. So she went up against the two front seats.
Because there was no
And then-
seatbelts back then.
No, there's no seatbelt. So then she laid in between,
Yeah,
and she was out, like gone, like out cold.
yeah.
And then Dad found himself walking down the highway.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I finally kind of came to myself a little bit. And he said, I could see the lights of Edmonton. And he said, why am I walking to Edmonton? I have two cars at home.
Yeah.
Why am I walking to Edmonton? And he said, I turned around and I saw their headlights sticking out of
The ditch.
the ditch. And he said, I had a car accident. And then he went back to his car and
But there
Grandma,
was a person on the road, and he said, call the
Yeah,
police.
call the
And he
police.
said, I already called the police.
and, yeah, he'd already called. So Dad doesn't know how long he had been walking from, because this gentleman, there's no cell phone. So he already called the police and already came back.
from a landline somewhere.
Right. And so then Dad came back to the car and he checked in the back and he said, oh, good, Auntie Sonia's sleeping. That's
Everything is fine. He called the ambulance.
Yeah, called the ambulance and he felt,
And they took Sonia first because they thought she was hurt more than Grandma. And Grandma,
crushed her whole side of her body.
yeah,
Because she was sitting in the front.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So her whole side of her body was crushed, all of her ribs.
yeah. It was
Everything
just that
pierced
her
her
heart
lungs.
was pierced.
Yeah, pierced her heart with one of her
Yeah, and
ribs.
that's why she just swelled right up.
And she also
Yeah.
smashed her face in. Because again, no seatbelts and smashed her throat.
Yeah, it was
She was very
terrible.
bad. But they took my Auntie Sonia, and my Auntie Sonia, for whatever reason, these girls were either dead, I think they were the two dead ones.
They were
right?
dead in
Yeah.
the
So they put
ambulance.
them in
But
the ambulance and they tried to take Auntie Sonia because she's out. And they tried to put her in the ambulance and she
she just wouldn't go in.
she started shrieking.
She won't go in there. I won't go in there.
An unconscious person screaming that they're not going to the ambulance.
But because
And then literally they took her away and she went unconscious again.
Right.
So they went, okay, so they didn't
because
put
there
her
was
in that
evil
ambulance.
was in there.
Yeah.
In that vehicle.
And even Grandpa said the same thing. He said, I tried, because he checked on Grandma,
Grandma.
he thought that
Mom
Auntie
was
Sonia
sleeping.
was sleeping and that Mom was okay. He felt her, she's bleeding, okay, but she's okay, he figured, in his head.
In a
But he said,
concussed state.
And he said, I went to go and check on these kids in this other car. And he said it was like there was like this 20-foot barrier around their car.
He couldn't
And I
go
could
in.
lean over, but I couldn't go any further. And he says the only way he could describe it, he said it many times, he says, it's like the devil claiming his own.
Yeah.
And he just
Like,
couldn't get in there
He wanted to see the kids that
to see
were
if they were okay.
if they were
you know,
okay or what.
What's going on.
But they were of course dead already. But there was, he said, like a barrier. He couldn't.
He said I could lean over it.
He said I would lean over like this to see if I could see, and he said there was a barrier. You just couldn't get through.
The devil was claiming
The
his own.
devil was claiming his own. How it pays to love the Lord Jesus. Oh, Lord Jesus.
Yeah, so
We
it's-
have to accept him and be his children. I'm telling you, he's so real. the devil is so real. We just have to say no to my life, and that's it. He's definitely real. Honest. Ugh. Yeah, there were 3 that died, and 2 boys. The girls all died. The boys were okay.
The one boy was driving and the one other boy was in the back seat. But everybody was on the one girl who's in the front seat and 2 girls in the back seat. Of course, that's the side the grandpa smashed into, right?
Yeah.
It was traumatic all the way around. It was traumatic for a number of years because it was the first. But I will tell you, because I got to work at Park Memorial, that was my first full-time job, was working at Park Memorial. And the guy who worked on Grandma and did all the wax on her face and everything like that, because my dad wanted an open casket.
Well, because
And they said, "Are you kidding me? There's no way you can have an open casket." He said, "I have to have an open casket, you know." It was very traditional at the time. You had an open casket.
Yeah.
So Mr. Gruszczuk, old man Mr. Gruszczuk, he told me himself when I was working there, he said, "I work all day and all night to make," because Dad gave Mr. Gruszczuk 2 pictures of Grandma. And he worked with wax and shaping and everything to make her look beautiful. And then the lady came in and she did makeup, and then they did the kerchief over the head, and she looked
just perfect. Just
I've seen that picture.
yeah.
You would never think there was anything wrong.
no,
Yeah,
and literally
yeah.
her whole face was crushed in,
She was
and the whole side of her body was destroyed, and you know everything, and yet she looked pristine in the casket. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, it was.
How hard they must have worked, but they loved Dad. I will tell you,
they did.
Mr. Smolik, who owned the funeral home at the time, well, now his children and his granddaughter is running it, but they loved Dad, like your grandpa, so much.
They really did.
And the Gruszczuks.
Well, there was so many from the church that were buried at
Right.
at that place, and Dad would always hold the funerals.
Yeah.
And they got to know him really well.
He used to ask him to do all kinds of funerals for them where people didn't have someone, and they would call Dad.
Right.
And
Right.
Dad and Mr. Smolik used to be good friends. And Mr. Smolik, before he died, he wanted to go fishing with Dad.
Oh,
so
yeah.
bad.
You just bought a brand new boat, and Dad was looking forward to it. And here he passed away. Never had a chance to go with him. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many things in life that God has been so real, so, like, I mean, the keys, who would have ever told me that Nettie took them? You know what I mean? I know it was the Lord. It was the Lord talking.
But you also did have some of the most wonderful friends.
Yes.
Like who? Can you just share with them the story? Now, my dad they didn't have a car. My dad was going to be a pastor of this church, and they didn't have a car. And who bought him the car?
Was it, what's his name?
That rich guy. Well, he's fairly wealthy. Yeah.
What's his name? I can't remember his name. I know who you're talking about.
But they all of a sudden just showed up at your place.
Yeah. Not only that, yeah, they bought the car. But one time, we had nothing in the house. Literally.
Yeah.
These people came to our place, and I'm so embarrassed because absolutely nothing
She
to
wanted
serve
to,
them.
she wanted to serve them something.
Something,
Absolutely.
even a cup of tea, something. There was nothing in the house that was edible to give to these people. What were the names?
I'm trying to.
That's where where the doctor was.
That's right.
At that place. I just can't think of it. But anyway, would you believe they turned around? They came to the house, we said hello, and everyone sat down, and
We said we'd be back.
No, they didn't say they're gonna be back. They just, we had, like I said, there was nothing that I could serve them. And they just turned around, him and his wife, and they turned around and they left. So we thought they were gone. And then about an hour later or so, I don't know how long, they're driving back in. Why are they coming back in? We're gonna kill them. And
No, it's
because you
later.
always have to give something, a cup of tea, a cup of coffee with a sandwich or
Anything.
anything. And there's nothing in the house really. And they're coming with this great big box of food. And they gave it to us. And I looked in there and it's just, if it wasn't an answer to prayer, God just looked after us. And another time, another package came and it was DeJukes.
Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. DeJuke. I thought, my children need clothing and I have no money. Like I wasn't working and Dad was making $50 at that time. $50, then it raised it to $100. And what do you buy? Where do you go to the store? And anyway, the clothes are wearing out on the children and everything. And then all of a sudden, this great big package of clothing comes from Mr. and Mrs. DeDuke. And it was just beautiful. Just, they were old clothes, they were mended,
But they were
but they were ironed, they were starched, they were just laying in the box. And all,
perfect.
I said, oh, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, so we all had to go to.
Thank you, Lord Jesus. I had got to dress my kids in. It was beautiful.
And they did the same, but they did the same kind of thing with the car. They
Yes.
talked to Dad. He was out fencing or something, working on the fences
I forget
or
what was
falling some trees or something like that.
what
But these were guys who wanted him to preach.
yeah,
They
there
wanted
were
him to pastor.
yeah, there were these three guys. They came in all in suits, dressed up to the T. And they came to invite my husband so he would come and be their pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And Your dad.
working.
and your dad is out in the bush. He's trying to get some wood for
I think he was
winter.
falling some
He's
trees or something.
preparing falling trees, all in a grubby pants and everything, and he comes out.
And he's filthy.
Oh my goodness! Anyway, they tell him why they're there. Would you consider it to be, because they heard that he preaches very well and they wanted him as their pastor. And they said, would you consider being our pastor? And they talked for quite a long time. And Dad was thinking, and then he said, okay, but if I go to your church and be a pastor, who is going to pastor these Ukrainian people? There are so many Ukrainians, and who's going to preach to them? He said, no. He said, I have to refuse. And he refused. He could have had, I don't know how many thousands of dollars he could have had.
Because they were paying lots.
They
They had
were
a big
paying-
church.
Really?
Yeah. But he refused, and he stayed with the Ukrainian ones that were paying him $100 a month. But you know what? He was so satisfied with that. He really
But
was.
they still turned around. And the one man showed up at their place and brought him a car, a brand new car. Here's the keys. Everything's paid for. Yeah,
It was,
seriously.
you know, God done so many miracles. You know, really, if you really believe that there is a God, he was in school. He was still in school. It's last year,
Mhm.
and he owed the school $250.
Mhm.
Where am I going to get $250? I have no money. I got nowhere to go. What am I going to do?
Yeah, good luck.
I don't know what to do. So he prayed.
Yep.
He just prayed. He said, Lord, you've got to supply this $250. He said, I don't know where it's coming from. I can't afford it. And you just have to look after me. And do you know that in a very short time, he gets a letter in the mail, and there's $250 check in there. And it was from Um, oh my goodness. Sophie, not Sophie. Anyway, I might think of it. I see the people. I know who they are. Here's $250. I don't know why you need $250, but I know you need $250, and here it is. For whatever it is that you need it, you'd use it. Well, if he wasn't grateful, he was so grateful to God. And those people, Susie, Rosie Duke, what were the father's and mother's name? She was married to a Rosie Duke guy.
The Rosie Dukes
A
were
big man.
the Rosie Dukes were a huge help in our family. Period. Right from the time I can remember.
But there was the father. The father, he said, I don't know why you need the $250, and exactly $250. But he says, here it is, for whatever it is you need it, you can use it. Well, he paid the school off.
Brandon was born, and he had a very stressful delivery and all. And then, remember Penny?
Yeah, Penny Horlack.
From
She was from
Nova Scotia.
from
PEI.
PEI. Yeah. She prayed. What a miracle. You would have choked to death. Penny sent me a letter to say, I have prayed so hard.
She said, what happened on the 27th of April? She said, I couldn't sleep. I was up and praying, and I couldn't be released. And she prayed and prayed and prayed.
And it was you had a
you were-
cord around your neck or something, and you would have gotten,
Well, he didn't have the cord around. He just got stuck.
or something
Yes.
like that. Yeah.
I kind of died for a little bit, didn't I?
No, but
You could have died.
you could
Yeah.
have died very easily. Like, I didn't
Your
hear
mom
you
couldn't
breathe.
Mama couldn't give birth to you for some reason.
You
Your
got
head was so big.
She
or
would.
something.
She didn't. She stopped pushing.
Yeah,
Well, she
whatever.
was right out of it.
She couldn't push anymore, and you would have died. So
Oh, yeah.
she and Penny
Yeah,
Horlack
yeah.
was the one that prayed you to life,
And
for
he
sure.
was-
And she also prayed for me. I was in Ukraine. There's this one street. It's called Arbit Street, and no cars can drive on it like in Florida. There's a street that no cars can drive. You just walk, and it's blocks and blocks and blocks. And I was always, every place I went, I took a whole bunch of literature with me to give out to people.
Sure.
And we're going,
Or if you had to use the restroom.
No, that was different.
anyway, this really happened again. It's just God is so good. I'm packing this bag with literature, with tracts. And we're going to Harvard Street. I'm so excited. I've never been there, and we're going to go. And Nadia Commandant says to me, Mary, this is one time I'm going to ask you, please, don't take your literature, because we're going down Arbit Street, and it's all occupied by Satanists. And you will not be able to take the literature with you. That's exactly what she said to me. And I've already packed a whole bunch, and I was packing some more. And I just kind of bent my head, and I said, Lord, you conquered Satan on the cross. He has no power over me. I'm taking my literature. And I did. I finished packing the bag like this, honest. And we're going. And Carol and Mrs. Commandant were in the car with me. But they wouldn't go with me. They let me go by myself. Anyway, I got out of the car, And I started walking, and the street, it's Arbor Street, it's got little cubicles where people are selling all kinds of things, all kinds of souvenirs and everything. And one after the other, after the other, after the other for blocks. And I'm going, and I'm giving out this literature. I'm saying, this is the way to heaven. This is the way to God. Would you like to have the literature? That's exactly the words I'm saying. And people are taking it from me. No problem. And I'm walking and all the way down till I'm almost finished, and I'm coming back the other way because it's again on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm coming all the way towards the end. And I have maybe about 5 tracts. I don't know how many I have in there in the bag. And just before I come to the going out, there's a man standing in the middle of the street. He's reading a paper. I walked right up to him and I said, "Sir," I said, "this is a beautiful day." I said, I see you like to read. How would you like to accept this literature that I have about God, about going to heaven? Would you like to look at it and read it? He glared at me and he said, "Who do you think I am?"
No, he says, don't you
And
know
I
who I am?
And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, I'm a communist and I don't believe a word you're saying." And I said to him, "But sir, what if you read it and you found out that you were wrong?" And I'm giving him this tract. He took it. He says, "What else do you have in that bag?" I said, "Whatever I have, you can take." So he took another couple, whatever it was. I had one piece left. After that incident, I'm walking out. Nettie and Carol are standing by the car waiting for me. And I see there's a man sitting in the car with his window rolled down and just sitting there. So I walked up to him and I said, "Sir, would you like to read this literature? It talks about heaven, how you can get there. Would you like to have it?" He said, "Of course." So we took this literature. That was the last one I gave out. Got home. I went. The girls were shocked. Anyway,
That you had made this journey
and I had
down
made
this area.
the journey all
Because it's
by
a dangerous
myself.
area.
Yeah.
Okay.
I gave out probably like, 300 tracks.
Yeah, and anyway, I came home and about a month later, I get this letter from my friend Penny Harlock. She's writing to me and she said, "Mary," she said, "on such and such a day," I think it was the 27th or something like that. She said, "Mary, please tell me." She said, "I simply labored in prayer for you that day. What happened to you? Were you sick? Did you have an accident? Mary, please tell me. I simply labored in prayer for you." I looked at that letter, and here it was, the letter that I was walking on that Arbor Street giving out literature. She was covering me with the blood of Jesus. And that's why I gave out every piece. I had no problem just with that one man. And even that was not much. I kind of, stood back because I thought, maybe he is a Satanist. I don't know. So I went and found that letter, and here it was. I was on Arbor Street.
At that time.
Yeah, isn't God good? I tell you, he is. Trust the Lord. Trust the Lord, children. I tell you, he is an awesome God. Yeah.
I actually have one more question.
Oh, no.
Now, I don't know if you know this or we went over this, but what are the names of your parents and Alex's parents? What are your parents' actual names?
My father's name he was called Fred by people, but his actual name in the birth certificate was Theodore. And my mother's name was Martha.
And
And Dad's father was Nicholas, and mother was Helen.
And that's where Nicholas came from. And
Yeah.
Nicholas, he turned his name down to Grandpa for Alexander Nicholas.
Mm-hmm.
And then it skipped Dennis for whatever reason, because
I
it's
don't know
Dennis
why.
Charles. And then they gave me Daniel Nicholas, and that's why I gave you Brandon Nicholas.
Yeah, so beautiful. It really is, yeah.
Do you by any chance happen to know your grandparents' names?
I've never heard of their names
Not yours or
or dad's, no. I just know there were, and I even forget her name, was the one, dad's sister was the closest one that I
Dad's
know
sister.
of. But I told my mom, there's a lady, I have a picture of her, quite a number of pictures of her, that she looks so much like my mom.
Huh.
And I said to her, Mom, I said, I think I met either your sister
Or a
or
relative.
a relative of some kind because she is so much like you.
And was this from Jitomer?
No, this was close to Cherchichi in Boulogne.
Oh, it's
In Boulogne,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Somewhere there I met her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very
But Alec, my husband, he actually met the pastor of the church in Morichivo, where my mom and dad and his mom and dad, of
Went to
all
church.
things, went to the same church.
They went to the same
And
church.
he met that Baptist pastor.
How in the world?
He
How
talked to
freaky
him.
is
Can you
that?
believe it? Then when I went, I was all over. Like, Dad was preaching in churches and I was on the streets talking to people about Jesus. And I remember these people took me to this place. And I said it was going towards where my mom lived because the only thing I knew. Because Dad, we didn't know where he came from
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
But Mom came from Cherchichi. She always said Cherchichi.
I know one of the villages, but I'll get back.
So Cherchichi was this place. Anyway, they took me there where Mom lived. And the closest we could come, there was so much rain and the mud. It was just gumbo. You couldn't get through. When a car went through, or horses or something, you couldn't get through. So they brought me to the village, but they couldn't go in because we couldn't drive through. So anyway, but they took me to this house. I'll never forget. I met my mom. I told her that. I met my mom's babysitter.
There you go.
Honestly, a little old lady, they brought me to her place, and I got to talking to her, and she said, I know Pichko y Marfa. She called them by their name. And they had 4 children. And she says, I remember, and she named them, so I know it was her. She said there was Michka Mike, Vasilko, Bill, Ivanchik, John, Nikola, Nick. Then they had a little girl. She said she was so tiny, you could hold her in the palm of your hand. And it's true. She was not even quite a pound. And Mom used to take a pillow like this, only much, much larger one. And she made a hole like this.
Yeah.
And she stuck her in there and wrapped her up. And that's her incubator. That's what she brought her to.
This is the village.
No kidding.
This is the village where your grandpa is from in Auntie Nettie.
There's the village, eh?
Yeah.
That's the village.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Do that.
It's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And like I said, I actually met this lady that
Babysat your mom.
babysat my mom's children.
You're for
For
It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable, really.
all it is.
And then you know that horrible tasting stuff?
That's okay. You
You
do
know
it.
that horrible tasting stuff, or so you say? Well, there's Grandpa drinking kvass, and they have it with just one glass,
What is this?
and they would rinse it with pure
They
alcohol.
make,
And then you'd buy it on the street. They carried it in these big wagons.
Looks like somebody's carrying out a concrete mixer.
Yep. And then they spots, and they would just pour it into this glass, and you drink it, and then they'd swill it around in this pure alcohol, and then next person.
yeah, they would sell it on the streets like that.
Yep.
Yeah. It's different.
Oh my goodness, that's funny.
Unfortunately, they're both passed away now, of course. But
Argentina, the ground is red.
Oh,
The ground is red.
red,
Yeah.
red.
Yeah.
And Dad had a checkered suit that was
17,
kind of
17,
with
16.
stripes,
16.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and it was a light color. And it got red, like red. And he had to preach. So I had to wash it. There was no cleaners. Put it.
yeah, what kind of cleaner?
Oh my goodness, you should have seen it. Oh, I don't even want to go there. Oh, man.
And that was their missionary card. That got sent to everybody in Western Canada, all the Baptist churches across Canada.
Yep.
Because Canadian Baptist Ministries never one of their missionaries.
Yep.
You twos.
Yeah, I'm so happy that I am 90 years old now. And I'm so happy that I can be together with you yet, that I'm still alive. I don't know how many more years I will have left.
15.
But thank you, Brandon. I would love to have another 15, but I do not think it's going to happen. I can hardly walk now with my chest so sore. Anyway, thank you. Thank you, all of you children. I love you all. I was not the mother you should have had, for sure. But that'll go with me as long as I live. I know that. But I love you all, and forgive me for my mistakes and my faults and my failures, and I really mean it from the depths of my heart. I don't want you to hold anything against me. I love you
It's
all.
supposed to be for your birthday. It's supposed to be smiling
I know,
and
but I have to. Anyway, may God just bless all of you in a very, very special way, and that you don't have to go through a lot of these things that I went through. I just pray that all your blessings will be from the Lord Jesus Christ, because he loves you. And I love you, and I will go into eternity loving you, and I'll be waiting for you on the other end. And I mean that.
Love you, Grandma.
Thank you.
for sure.